Chapter 505, YF-21, the legendary mysterious body that could be controlled through the brainwave control system. No matter how much Ray Minkai imagined when he was young, what kind of scenery it would be when he could board the YF-21, it was not as shocking as sitting in the YF-21 now and connecting with the BDI system installed on it. Wind. As long as he was connected to the BDI system, even if Ray Minkai was sitting in the tightly protected cockpit, he could still feel the airflow from the fuselage and the wings. Ray Minkai could not use any words to describe this wonderful feeling. In the end, Ray Minkai could only sigh in his heart that this trip was not in vain. This is the Flight Test Center. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, how do you feel now? After Ray Minkai took off with the YF-21, Garrett returned to the command hall of the new Edward Flight Test Center with a white cat, State Zero. Little did they know that the moment the cute white cat, State Zero, appeared in this command hall, it attracted everyone's attention. There was no other reason. In the impression of everyone in the new Edward Flight Test Center, Garrett was a strict and unsmiling director of new airframe development. Even if he was also a test pilot, he would only give them the illusion that the crystallization of one's own hard work should be tested by oneself until it is developed to the most perfect. Therefore, when the small and cute white cat, State Zero, was brought to the command hall by Garrett, the scene that happened was not surprising. Very good. It feels like the YF-21 is my own body. Ray Minkai smiled slightly and said in his mind. He knew that the BDI system would inevitably accurately repeat his thoughts. Garrett nodded slightly. After looking around at the people who pretended not to care, but secretly drifted over, he bent down and put the white cat, State Zero, on the ground. Stay here. After Garrett said softly, he turned around and took the headset from the correspondent, ready to connect with Ray Minkai. After the white cat, State Zero, was placed on the ground, it shook its head left and right and found that there was nothing unusual about the command center. It jumped on the table and lay down, accepting the gazes from around. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Report current location. The white cat's action made Garrett move his gaze slightly. After confirming that the kitten would not run away, Garrett immediately devoted himself to his work. Currently in the 7th District, altitude 36800. Ray Minkai's eyes were closed. With just a thought, the data he needed to know quietly emerged in his mind. Very well. According to the original plan, YF-21 should have completed the BDI system, is now ready to enter the next stage of testing. But due to some accidents, YF-21's plan can only be returned to the BDI system adjustment plan. Fortunately, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, you really surprised me. When the YF-21 signal symbol appeared on the screen of the command center, Garrett slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, can you complete the adjustment of the BDI system by today? As soon as Garrett's words came out, the people in the command center suddenly exclaimed. Since the launch of the Supernova project, the performance of Garrett and YF-21 had been deeply engraved in everyone's heart. Garrett spent a lot of effort to smoothly pilot the latest advanced fighter, and they actually want this new pilot to complete the BDI system adjustment within a day. Isn't this forcing people to do it? In the exclamation, the white cat, State Zero, opened its eyes slightly, glanced at Garrett, and sighed secretly. Always giving such difficult questions. No problem. Ray Minkai's refreshing voice interrupted the exclamation in the command center. At the same time, it also made the corner of Garrett's mouth curl up slightly for a moment. Then let's begin. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. In the sky above an altitude of 38,600 meters, YF-21, who was flying alone in this barren airspace, was lonely, but also free. As the BDI system and Ray Minkai's connection became deeper and deeper, Ray Minkai felt that this might be the legendary man-machine unity. As long as he had a thought, under the feedback of the BDI system, YF-21 would inevitably make the greatest response to restore the effective action to the maximum extent. He opened his hand, and the wings unfolded. He clenched his fist, and the wings contracted. In this barren airspace, Ray Minkai seemed to have become a celestial with steel wings, wandering in this airspace wantonly. With a thought, YF-21's propulsion engine instantly erupted. The Mach ring suddenly appeared and quickly expanded behind YF-21 until it disappeared into the sky. So fast. Director Garrett, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai's acceleration data is now very close to yours. When YF-21 broke out at full speed, the staff responsible for monitoring the various data of YF-21 looked back at Garrett standing behind him in surprise. In this regard, Garrett just nodded. That indifferent expression almost made the staff subconsciously think that Ray Minkai was a human with Jet Lottie bloodline. As a matter of fact, Garrett's top speed record was very popular in the New Edward Flight Test Center. Compared to those shooting records, the most simple top speed record was the most straightforward symbol of strength. After all, Garrett relied on the excellent physique of the Jet Lottie people to maintain the record that made the pilots of the entire New Edward Flight Test Center look up to. Now, this record seemed to be about to be broken. 1-1, 1-3, 1-5, 1-8, 2-0. The louder the counting sound made everyone stand up subconsciously and stare at the signal logo representing YF-21 on the main screen. Next to this logo, there was a set of rapidly changing coefficients. That was the coefficient called Mach. Obviously, what Ray Minkai had to do now was to squeeze out all the acceleration of YF-21. However, in this way, it seemed to deviate from the BDI system adjustment plan mentioned by Garrett before. But Garrett, as the person in charge, did not object to this. Everyone also quietly began to measure how fast Ray Minkai could reach when he boarded YF-21 for the first time. 2-3, 2-5. With a bang, the sound of the chair falling to the ground made Milad, who walked into the command center from outside, frown slightly. What? That is? Milad, who was about to reprimand, smiled when he saw the rapidly moving logo on the main screen and the set of coefficients that changed with it. It's good to be young. Don't you think so? Director Garrett. Garrett heard the sound of Millard coming to the command center, but he didn't turn his head. He just nodded slightly as a form of greeting to Millard. After that, he focused on looking at the symbol representing YF-21. Milad was not angry about this. He knew that after the accident of YF-21, Garrett was more anxious than anyone else. Fortunately, YF-21's testing progress was unlikely to be too far behind. 3-0, 3-0, right. Director Garrett, what was the record you held before? Milad glanced at his subordinates, who were hiding in the corner and gesturing. He knew that these guys must be trying their luck on whether Ray Minkai could break Garrett's speed record. Well, it seems to be Mach 5. 7. Garrett pondered for a moment, but it seemed that even he himself couldn't remember the speed record he had set back then. Mach 5. 7? That's a good number. However, according to Director Garrett's strength, he should not have reached the limit yet, right? The physique of the Jet Lottie people was famous throughout the Milky Way. It's a meaningless competition. Garrett sneered at this, but he suddenly retorted, if Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai can break this record, then he'll be the test pilot of YF-21. Milad glanced at Garrett's calm face, but in fact his face was full of emotions. Then he smiled slightly. Then let's wait and see. This was a sudden challenge. With the acquiescence of Milad and Garrett, the news that someone challenged Garrett's record was spread from the command center. In a blink of an eye, the real-time broadcast from the command center became the focus of the New Edward Flight Test Center. 4-0-0-0-0-0. At this moment, as long as you turned your head to look at the sky in the north of the New Edward Flight Test Center, you could see a straight white trajectory across the sky rapidly extending farther and deeper into the sky. The main character who drew this white trajectory in the sky was the focus of everyone's attention. Every breakthrough would become a cheer that resounded throughout the New Edward Flight Test Center. Faster, faster, faster. The sky in front of them had become an indistinct blue, and the white clouds around YF-21 had become a blurry shadow that disappeared in a blink of an eye. With the continuous breakthroughs in speed, two of the three major obstacles in the flight of the aircraft, the sound barrier and the heat barrier, appeared one after another. The Mach ring that represented the breaking of the sound barrier had already dissipated behind YF-21, and the sparks that represented the arrival of the heat barrier were quietly approaching the nose of YF-21 at this moment. The strange thing was that the powerful G-force brought about by the YF-21 superspeed had far exceeded the limit that ordinary people could bear, but Lei Mingkai only felt a slight push from the acceleration at the beginning. Then he didn't feel it anymore. This might be the effect of an auxiliary technology used in the helmet used by the YF-21 pilot. The pads on this custom-made helmet could release a sound wave similar to alpha brainwaves. Under the influence of this sound wave, the pilot could obtain the greatest degree of relaxation. In a state of high concentration or even excitement, the pilot would not be affected by the strong negative effects caused by being shot in high-G maneuvers. Thus, the pilot could unleash the loudest combat power. Now, Lei Mingkai was able to feel nothing when the YF-21 challenged Mach 5. Perhaps it was because of this technology. In addition, it was worth mentioning that this technology could use sound wave stimulation to control and affect certain emotions. And the technology that also had this similar, or even came from the same development principle, was the dark history that almost led to the destruction of Earth's unification, Sharonep. But this was a story for another day. Now, under the gaze of the new Edward Flight Test Center, YF-21, driven by Lei Mingkai, successfully broke through Mach 5. Above the sky, an extremely dazzling meteor appeared. 5-1, 5-2, 5-3, it's close. It's close. Now, the history of the new Edward Flight Test Center was about to turn a new page. Everyone was focused on this historical moment. The results are coming out. Milad casually pulled out a chair and sat down. He was not as strong as Garrett, who was like a small mountain and could stand there steadily without moving. As a veteran who retired from the frontline battlefield due to disability, Millard knew very well that he could not force himself now. 5-5, cheers suddenly sounded. At this moment, even if YF-21 and Lei Mingkai could not break the record set by Garrett, they had already received the recognition of the new Edward Flight Test Center. 5-6, it's here. It's here. At this moment, the new Edward Flight Test Center was silent. It was so quiet that even the sound of breathing could not be heard. Only the sound of the wind passing through the desert outside could be heard. The next second, the deafening cheers suddenly flooded the new Edward Flight Test Center. 5-7, 5-8. Success. The record set by Garrett was broken by the newcomer Lei Mingkai. Moreover, it seemed that this was far from the limit. The meteor in the sky was still streaking across the sky, leaving its own trajectory in the sky of Planet Eden. At this time, in the airspace near Planet Eden, the light that represented the end of the FLOD transition disappeared in a flash. Life is really like a little girl that is hard to fathom. Planet Eden, new Edward Flight Test Center. I'm here. VF-11, who escaped from the FLOD transition, flew toward Planet Eden amidst the cheers of its pilots. Not long after, VF-11, who came from afar, entered the atmosphere of Planet Eden. However, before the VF-11 pilot could contact the new Edward Flight Test Center, a small black suddenly appeared on the horizon. Moreover, the speed of this small black that was extremely fast. Before the VF-11 pilot could react, he had already flown past the VF-11 pilot. The huge airflow caused by it almost made the VF-11 lose control and plunge into the desert below. Fortunately, the VF-11 pilot reacted in time and managed to rescue the aircraft from the dangerous turbulence. What the hell is going on? That shadow is a body. Countless doubts surged in his mind. The VF-11 pilot kept switching the onboard radar, but he still could not find anything. In desperation, he could only choose to contact the new Edward Flight Test Center. New Edward. New Edward. This is Falcon 107. An unidentified aircraft just flew past District 7. Please verify the situation immediately. This is New Edward. Falcon 107. Welcome to the New Edward Flight Test Center. The aircraft that just flew past District 7 is our new body that just completed a flight around the world at Mach 6. Mach 6? Is the pilot crazy? Is this the power of a new body? Chapter 506. On that day, the meteor over Eden left a heavy mark on the record of the new Edward Flight Test Center. Although it had deviated from the purpose of the test, when the YF-21 landed and returned to the hangar, Ray Minkai was warmly welcomed. Among the crowd, the hill-like Garrett was particularly eye-catching. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, how do you feel? Garrett knew that the driving assistance system of the YF-21 could keep the pilot in a state of high G-force for a long time without being affected by it. However, since the development and manufacture of the YF-21, only Ray Minkai could fly around the world at high Mach for a long time. It feels good. If I didn't look at the meter, I wouldn't have believed that the YF-21 was in a state of Mach 6 just now. Ray Minkai took off his helmet, took a deep breath of the unique mechanical breath in the hangar, and smiled. This is a very good fighter. Director Garrett, I'm proud to be able to drive it into the blue sky. Ray Minkai's undisguised love for the YF-21 made Garrett's mouth curl up slightly. Really? Then, we have to prepare for the next test now. Come, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Our opponent is here. After that, Garrett turned and walked to the door, looking back and waiting for Ray Minkai to follow. Opponent, Ray Minkai said secretly. He couldn't help but recall the VF-11 he encountered when he flew around the world at the supersonic speed of Mach 6. Judging from the time and Garrett's reaction, the so-called opponent was probably the craziest pilot in the history of the ultra-space-time fortress, Young Dai's son. Facing Madman Young, this may be Ray Minkai's biggest challenge in history. However, neither of them spoke along the way and remained silent. Garrett no longer asked Ray Minkai's driving experience, and Ray Minkai was also thinking. The appearance of Madman Young was the turning point for the entire incident to unfold. Recalling Himimi's strange report about the fragment, Ray Minkai immediately set his sights on Sharon. It was an abnormal space-time fluctuation detected by the Space Administration from the endless void. The pattern of the abnormal space-time fluctuation was almost exactly the same as the pattern on the fragment that Ray Minkai had drawn when he handed it to the Ministry of Justice. In order to solve this puzzle, Ray Minkai and the White Cat State Zero came to this world. Meow! Suddenly, at the next corner, a small figure ran out. After shouting at Garrett, it jumped onto Ray Minkai's shoulder. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, your cat is very smart. Garrett's gaze moved slightly as he sized up the White Cat, State Zero. No, this is just a momentary inspiration. At other times, this little guy is just a foodie. Ray Minkai replied with a smile that was not a smile. As he spoke, the White Cat State Zero's claws quietly popped out, wanting to give Ray Minkai a fierce claw attack. But unexpectedly, Ray Minkai's driving suit that had not been changed at all blocked the White Cat State Zero's claws. The sturdy driving suit made the White Cat State Zero suddenly gnash its teeth in hatred. If it were not for the huge commotion, the White Cat State Zero would never let Ray Minkai go. We're here. Along the way, Garrett and Ray Minkai came to the conference room. Looking at the closed door, Ray Minkai seemed to be able to see who was sitting there, waiting for his arrival. Come in. Colonel Millard's voice came from the door. Then, Ray Minkai saw two groups of people sitting at a long table arranged in a V shape. On the side near the door was the YF-21 development team, led by Garrett, which was where Ray Minkai was now. On the opposite side, on the side near the floor-to-ceiling window, was the opponent of Garrett's team, the YF-19 development team, led by Yang Nguyen. As the host of this meeting, Colonel Millard sat on the podium in front of the long table. What was worth Ray Minkai's attention was the man sitting next to the girl with long blonde hair tied into a ponytail and freckles on her face. Arrogant and unruly, this was Ray Minkai's first impression of him. Of course, this impression was also in line with Ray Minkai's memory of him. He was the craziest pilot among the many pilots in the ultra-space-time stronghold. However, Young Dyson did not notice Ray Minkai's gaze, but stared at Garrett next to Ray Minkai. Even if the two sides did not erupt into violent verbal attacks, anyone with a discerning eye could see how terrible the battle between the two sides was. Hey, isn't the physique of the Jetlati people the most powerful? Why is your right arm in a sling now? You look so sickly. Young Dyson's gaze moved down, and he obviously saw Garrett's right hand hanging on his chest. I don't remember our new Edwards Flight Test Center having such a despicable pilot. To Ray Minkai's surprise, Garrett did not face young Dyson's verbal attack head-on, but looked calmly at Millard. Well, Master Garrett, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, please sit down. Let me introduce you. After Millard's gaze went back and forth between Garrett and young Dyson, he began to introduce young Dyson to everyone present. This is young Dyson, who will be transferred to the new Edwards Flight Test Center starting today. According to the order, he is the opponent of YF-21 and the pilot of YF-19. On Garrett's side, except for Garrett and Ray Minkai who knew about it, everyone else looked at young Dyson in surprise. In the case of YF-19 losing at least 4 excellent pilots in a row, there was still a madman who came to serve as the test pilot of the unknown body. He's just a disobedient clown. He doesn't know what he's about to face. Garrett snorted coldly and unceremoniously ridiculed. What? You bastard dare to say it again? Young Dyson, who was provoked on the spot, retorted loudly. Young Nguyen, didn't you tell this idiot how many pilots you've lost? With that said, Garrett ignored young Dyson, who was yelling on the side, and looked at Millard instead. Colonel, I think the outcome is now clear. Our test pilot of YF-21 is enough to demonstrate the performance of YF-21. In this case, YF-19 is no longer enough to continue the next step of the test mission. As soon as Garrett's words came out, everyone present, except for young Dyson, all looked at Ray Minkai. Just now, Ray Minkai, who completed the flight around the world at Mach 6 speed, didn't seem to have any abnormalities. It was as if the heavy burden from being in the high Mach state for a long time didn't exist at all. This is troublesome. Young Nguyen helplessly patted his head. The amazing performance of YF-21 just now had probably reached the ears of General Gomez, the highest person in charge of the Supernova Project. Based on the current situation, the YF-19 project was probably going to be cut in half. Colonel Millard, I just came here today. I haven't even been on YF-19. If I admit defeat like this, I won't accept it. Young Dyson would never admit that he had to accept the fate of failure when he just arrived. Is that so? Lieutenant, before you came to the new Edward Flight Test Center, the data of YF-19 had a rough model. Compared to our YF-21, the difference is not just a little bit. Garrett unceremoniously used facts to rub young Dyson on the ground. What? You bastard! Shut up! Shut up! Just when young Dyson was about to persuade him, Millard shouted and stopped the meeting that was about to go out of control. At the same time, the phone rang. Yes, I'm Millard. Please speak. It seemed to be the eve of the announcement of the Supernova Project. Looking at Millard, who was holding the microphone and listening to the voice from the other side, everyone couldn't help but shut their mouths and wait for the arrival of fate. TSK, Guy, you have to continue. In this silence, the White Cat's ears moved slightly and said such a sentence in Ray Minkai's mind. But Ray Minkai wasn't surprised by this. Is that so? Then, the good show here will continue to play out. It's also a very good result. Through the White Cat's retelling, Ray Minkai knew that the person on the other side of the phone must be the highest person in charge of the Supernova Project, General Gomez. The reason why he suppressed the stunning performance of YF-21 just now and chose to continue the competition between YF-19 and YF-21 was probably because of a project hidden behind the Supernova Project. Ghost X-9. Perhaps it was also one of the biggest obstacles in Ray Minkai's mission this time. The microphone was gradually put down, and Millard's gaze was also raised. He slowly looked around the crowd from left to right, and from right to left. He looked at the seemingly calm faces, but in fact, they were extremely nervous. After a long time, Millard slowly opened his mouth. The call just now was from General Gomez. He announced that the Supernova Project will continue. In addition, he specifically asked me to tell the YF-21 team, Director Garrett, and Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. The final result of an excellent fighter will not be determined by the data of a certain specialty. Garrett and Ray Minkai looked at each other. After realizing that the other was not surprised by this, they responded in unison to Millard's words. Understood, Colonel Millard. In the next second, the personnel on Yang Nguyen's and Young Dyson's side suddenly cheered. However, Millard's light words brought them back to their original state. Director Yang Nguyen, First Lieutenant Young Dyson, now that the airframe is being returned to the factory for maintenance, you can only temporarily serve as the mission monitoring for the YF-21 team. Believe me, only by fully understanding the opponent can you defeat the opponent. After that, Millard put his hands on the table, slowly stood up, and announced the dismissal of the meeting. The people who left behind Millard were Garrett and Ray Minkai's side. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Be careful of him. He's a very difficult opponent. After leaving the conference room and disbanding, Garrett invited Ray Minkai to his room. Yes, I know. Director Garrett. No one would treat a 3-time Roy Foca Medal winner as a good-for-nothing idiot. Perhaps intentionally, Ray Minkai said something that Garrett did not know. What? 3-time Roy Foca? Although Garrett did not join Earth Unification, he also knew what the Roy Foca Medal represented. In the end, even if there were more words, Garrett could only turn them into a sentence to remind Ray Minkai. Please, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, whether it's for me, for our team, for YF-21, you must defeat Young Dyson. I know. This is also the reason why I'm standing here. Director Garrett, thank you. I should have been the one to do it. Garrett sighed slowly. Okay, I believe you're tired from today's flight. Go back and rest first. Next, our testing progress should be faster. Then, see you tomorrow. Director Garrett. The next day, Ray Minkai once again changed into YF-21's special pilot suit and stood in front of YF-21, waiting for the boarding notice from the crew. And White Cat State Zero squatted obediently at Ray Minkai's feet. Kai, that man is coming. When the White Cat State Zero's voice sounded in Ray Minkai's mind, Ray Minkai also found a figure standing at the gate of YF-21's hangar looking around. There was no doubt that this man was Young Dyson. Fortunately, today's test mission of YF-21 did not require a wingman to observe, so Young Dyson also had some free time to run here and look around. But unfortunately, in order to understand Young Dyson's technical level, Young Dyson had to sit in the stroller like a baby and be tormented by Yang Nguyen and others. Hey, over there. White Cat State Zero looked back at the man standing at the gate, but was blocked by the staff of YF-21 team and could not get close. Suddenly, Young Dyson, who was blocked by the staff, seemed to see White Cat State Zero looking at him. Immediately, he waved his hand and shouted, Kitty, White Kitty, hurry up and call your master for me. Little did he know that such a sentence immediately angered White Cat State Zero. It hated being called a kitty the most. Roar. As soon as it turned around and moved its 4 limbs, White Cat State Zero turned into an afterimage and rushed in front of Young Dyson. Clang! Its sharp claws popped out, and in a flash, Young Dyson's face was suddenly covered with countless scars. The surrounding staff were silent for a while, and then a deafening sound broke out. Ha 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 ha! What's going on? Hearing the sound, Garnet came over and glanced at Young Dyson, whose face was covered with scars. His face was distorted, but he quickly controlled his expression. Isn't this Lieutenant Young Dyson? What brings you to our hangar? Young Dyson gritted his teeth and looked down at the white cat that was still baring its fangs at him. He immediately turned around and left. No matter how much Young Dyson ran amok, he probably could not be so heartless as to argue with a white cat, right? Looking at Young Dyson's angry but unable to do anything, Garnet shook his head helplessly. After dispersing everyone, he reached out and carried the White Cat State Zero, whose fur was standing on end. Okay, he's not a bad person. He's just curious about our YF-21 team. Director, did State Zero cause trouble? Ray Minkai, who finally sensed that something was wrong, turned around and looked at Garnet, who was carrying the white cat State 0. No, it's just that your cat was frightened. Okay. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, continue your mission. State 0, let me take care of it. Okay. However, Garnet did not know that at that moment, Ray Minkai and the white cat State 0 exchanged glances. The white cat State 0's eyes were full of pride. Chapter 507. The eagle soaring in the blue sky eventually had to return to its nest. YF-21, which had been flying recklessly in the blue sky for half a day, finally landed slowly on the third runway of the new Edward Flight Test Center under the driving of Ray Minkai. At the same time, the staff, who had already been prepared, swarmed up and surrounded YF-21, which had just walked down from the runway and stopped in the designated position. Among them, 2 staff members put a simple ladder next to the cockpit of YF-21, swiftly climbed on both sides of YF-21's cockpit, and removed the slightly cumbersome BDI system pilot's suit for Ray Minkai. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. The current stage of the test mission is over. The next mission is to perform a 24-hour maintenance on the YF-21 before continuing. Garrett, who stood next to YF-21, looked at Ray Minkai, who slowly walked down from YF-21 with the assistance of the staff, and said, In other words, I have a short vacation now? Ray Minkai asked while moving his hands. In theory, yes. In fact, the unknown signal just now really concerned me. Without figuring out why this unknown signal appeared, I'm afraid I can't let Second Lieutenant and YF-21 take off rashly. Garrett's words made Ray Minkai nod. Half an hour ago, when YF-21, which had just completed all the test missions, was preparing to return under the driving of Ray Minkai, an unknown signal suddenly broke into YF-21's communication channel. Of course, this unknown phenomenon was naturally immediately reported to the new Edward Flight Test Center by Ray Minkai. However, after the new Edward Flight Test Center quickly searched the nearby airspace, and even after the signal channel of the Earth Unified Army station nearby, they still couldn't find the source of this unknown signal. Under the confusion, everyone's heart couldn't help but hang in suspense. Although from the current situation, YF-21 was not affected by this unknown signal. But neither Millard nor Garrett dared to take the risk. So, after the two quickly communicated, they made the decision to let Ray Minkai and YF-21 return. Then, I'll take this opportunity to buy some cat food for State 0. Ray Minkai said so, but he hid something in his heart. Although the new Edward Flight Test Center couldn't figure out the source of the unknown signal, Ray Minkai felt that he seemed to have touched on something. Now, Garrett said that it would take at least 24 hours to carry out the next flight test, so Ray Minkai just took advantage of the situation. White Cat State 0 walked over from the side and jumped on Ray Minkai's shoulder as usual, waiting for Ray Minkai's next move. Obviously, State White Cat 0 also knew what the unknown signal meant. Well, there should be a second lieutenant. Lieutenant, you report to Colonel Millard, and you're on your way. Leave this to me. Understood. Half an hour later, a car drove out of the new Edward Flight Test Center on the highway to the city. White Cat State 0, sitting in the passenger seat, raised its head and looked at the windshield in front, then stretched out its right paw and pressed the window button next to the passenger seat. Hula! In an instant, the cool wind blowing in from the open window suddenly made White Cat State 0 squint its eyes slightly, and even its furry tail shook involuntarily. It was as if he was enjoying the cool breeze. Ray Minkai, who was holding the steering wheel with both hands, glanced at White Cat State 0. State 0, tell me what happened just now. White Cat State 0's ears perked up, and it looked over. Just now? That unknown signal? Kai, what did you hear? It seemed like someone was calling my name. In that chaotic noise, I heard my name. Really? I didn't hear anything here. It was just some noise. It was no different from what the new Edward Flight Test Center monitored. So, Kai, do you know what this means? The result obtained by White Cat State 0 was no different from the result obtained by the new Edward Flight Test Center. But in the face of this result, Lei Minkai heard someone calling out to him. Due to this anomaly, White Cat State Zero targeted Ray Minkai. You're saying that someone is watching me? The people from the Destiny Council? Ray Minkai's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, and his gaze became much colder. No, I'm not sure about this. However, one thing he knew was that someone had sensed his presence and was calling out to him. This point is very clear. White Cat State Zero stretched out its hands, laid on the dashboard, and stretched its neck to look at the fast traffic on the highway ahead. Suddenly, White Cat State Zero's eyes flashed, and it raised its head to look at the screen projected on the roadside lamppost. Kai, look, don't you feel a sense of familiarity? Ray Minkai heard it and looked over. At the same time, a burst of music was transmitted to Ray Minkai's ears. At this moment, Ray Minkai's thoughts suddenly turned upside down along with the music that entered his ears. Sharon, there was no doubt. When Ray Minkai heard the music and saw the pattern on the projection screen on the lamppost, he knew that this was the world's most popular virtual singer, Sharon Epp. However, in the midst of this familiar music, Lei Minkai heard a melody that he had just heard not too long ago. Victoria Consort. Yes, the melody hidden in Sharon Epp's music was Victoria Consort's singing that caused Ray Minkai to go berserk. However, although the music did not cause Ray Minkai to go berserk, it had set off thousands of waves in Ray Minkai's heart. Victoria, Ray Minkai's hands turned, and the car he was driving sped up, overtaking the truck in front, and continued to accelerate towards the city where some buildings could already be seen. Kai, do you have any ideas? White Cat State Zero sat back in the passenger seat, reached out to close the window, and asked Ray Minkai. And some. But I need to go to the city to know. Ray Minkai did have some ideas in his heart, but he still needed to go to the city to confirm it. For some reason, the closer they got to the city, the stronger the inexplicable feeling in Ray Minkai's heart. It was as if there was something in front of him that was calling him. They sped all the way. The closer they got to the city, the clearer Sharon's singing became. Who is this woman? He seemed to be very popular. Consort or queen? White Cat State Zero's ears trembled as it looked at the colorful holographic projection in front of it. No, she is not human. State Zero. If I must say, she should be considered as a kind of electronic life form. It's just that she's still far from reaching that level. Electronic life form? Is she the little girl's sister? White Cat State Zero originally wanted to use its own case for comparison, but when it thought of the fact that it could only be considered as a metal life form, it changed its words to another case. And this case was undoubtedly Hinana, the only person White Cat State Zero had contact with. According to its own words, Hinana could indeed be considered as a kind of electronic life form. No, it has not reached that level. The current Sharon Epp should only be a kind of electronic program, but its intelligence equation has far surpassed its kind. The car had already driven into the city, while Ray Minkai and White Cat State Zero were talking. The surrounding scenery changed from the flat plains and the uneven mountain peaks in the distance to the forest of buildings and colorful holographic projections, as well as the people coming and going. White Cat State Zero turned around and leaned against the window, looking at the people coming and going around, and narrowed its eyes slightly. From its vision, it seemed to be able to see a trace of an unusual scene. Every time the cross formed by the two iron chains intertwined in the shape of a cone appeared, among the pedestrians, there would always be a few pedestrians who stopped to watch and showed a trace of fanaticism. Even when the pedestrians were crossing the road, there were a few who stopped at the zebra crossing in the midst of Sharon Epp's singing and did not care about the dangerous situation they were in. This electronic life form is more dangerous than Princess Victoria. White Cat State Zero's eyes were full of solemnity. Although Princess Victoria's singing could stir people's hearts, based on what White Cat State Zero had witnessed, Victoria's singing was far inferior to this electronic life form named Sharon Epp. Ray Minkai did not answer, but turned the car into the central area of the city, which was the central island of the Atlanta Stadium where Sharon Epp's Galaxy Tour concert was held. To clear the doubts in his heart, he was afraid that he would only be able to obtain clues by going to the scene personally. However, the idea was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Even if Ray Minkai understood what was going to happen next, he still underestimated Sharon Epps' influence. The car that he was driving had just driven down the bridge, and it was blocked by the turbulent flow of people. What a bewitching witch! The speed of the car was hindered by the flow of people, and it had to slow down. Ray Minkai looked left and right and found that it would be difficult to even open the car door, let alone move forward. The only feasible way was to quickly retreat before the flow of people completely closed in. In the end, Ray Minkai chose this method and drove the car to the other side, where there were fewer people. Looking at the crowd that gathered from all directions, he shook his head helplessly. Sharon Epp is indeed worthy of her name. This terrifying scene is indeed beyond my expectations. Sharon Epp's concert would begin 3 days later, but those fans have been waiting outside the Atlanta Stadium since... No, it should be said that they have been waiting outside the Atlanta Stadium since even earlier, waiting to meet with Sharon Epp. Stupid human beings. Why are they addicted to the illusory singing? White Cat State Zero shook its head, and its tone was full of disdain. Life is too difficult. They're just looking for solace that can comfort their own souls. Let's go. The idea of getting close to the Atlanta Stadium was obviously impossible. In that case, there was only one place where he could obtain information about Sharon Epp: Star Hill. Originally, Ray Minkai did not want to get involved in the love triangle between Young Dyson, Garnet, and Mei Wong. But now, it seemed that they were related to Sharon Epp, and the only people that Ray Minkai could come into contact with at the moment were them. And inside the Atlanta Stadium, among the staff who were nervously preparing for the 3-day concert, there was a woman in a red office lady with shoulder-length black hair. She was holding a paper cup and standing in front of the debugging desk. While looking at the brain projection in front of her, she was talking to the programmer next to her. She was Mei Wong Fong Long. She was also the female lead in this Sharon Epp incident. Miss Mei Wong, the preparations are done. You can go and rest first. A man appeared on the platform above. He was the person in charge of Sharon Epp's plan, Matthew. Looking down at Mei Wong condescendingly, Matthew smiled and said that the 2 staff members who offended Mei Wong were fired. However, Mei Wong did not thank him. Instead, Mei Wong replied coldly and turned to leave. But just as Mei Wong left the stadium and came to the passage leading to the exit, she suddenly saw a shadow flashing by at the turn in front. Who is it? Now that the entire Atlantis had become Sharon Epp's home ground, there was no one else except the staff who served Sharon Epp. Not to mention that during this tense working hours, there would be people wandering around in the passage. Mei Wong's shouts kept echoing in the passage, but they didn't draw out a single shadow. Mei Wong stood in the passage and frowned slightly. Is it an illusion? The silence in the depths of the passage made Mei Wong wonder if he was too tired. Puzzled, Mei Wong stepped forward again. However, before he could walk far, a strange feeling suddenly swept over him from behind. In an instant, Mei Wong's nerves were tense, and the hair on her back stood straight. Death was so close to Mei Wong at this moment. He's here, my knight. As the laughter sounded, the death scythe hanging on Mei Wong's neck quietly disappeared, as if the scene just now had never happened. Who is it? Extremely nervous, Mei Wong suddenly turned around and looked behind her. There was nothing there. There was only a white shadow passing by the corner of Mei Wong's eyes. Who the hell is it? Come out. Mei Wong's voice echoed in the passage. The coldness and the experience of death at that moment deeply pierced Mei Wong's heart, causing her voice and even her body to tremble. What happened? Who the hell is it? Miss Mei Wong. Hearing the noise, the security guard broke open the door and rushed over, and saw Mei Wong in a panic. No, it's nothing. Mei Wong looked at the nervous security personnel, and it just shook his head. After that, he ignored the security personnel and walked out of the Atlanta Stadium. He then got into the taxi arranged by Matthew. Let's go to Star Hill. Even sitting in the warm taxi, Mei Wong's body was still trembling. The scene just now made Mei Wong subconsciously choose to go to the most profound place in her memory. Chapter 508. Star Hill. In the rapidly developing city of Eden, A hill with a large windmill generator array was indeed a rare sight. Looking from Star Hill, one could see the rapidly developing city that firmly engraved the traces of mankind on this planet. There's nothing here. White Cat State Zero stood under the windmill and turned its head to look at the hill where there were only 2 or 3 people other than the windmill. Don't be impatient. The person we're waiting for hasn't arrived yet. Ray Minkai patted White Cat State Zero's head and looked back at the path leading to the observation deck. Sure enough, not long after, a tall and sturdy figure that was like a small mountain slowly walked up from the foot of the mountain. Big guy, why is he here? White Cat State Zero's eyes were sharp and immediately recognized that the figure was Garrett. Of course, he's here to catch up. Ray Minkai looked around and couldn't help but sigh. The world was indeed moving forward according to the established pace. Garrett stood on the observation deck and watched the sun gradually sink into the sea silently. On the other side, a red figure appeared. However, even from distance, Ray Minkai could see that the woman's situation was not very good. She seemed to be tired. Ray Minkai's brows gradually wrinkled. A woman in red who came to Star Hill alone at this time. Her identity was almost certain. However, in Ray Minkai's memory, the woman's condition seemed to have exceeded Ray Minkai's expectations. No, Kai, there's something strange about that woman. White Cat State Zero was stunned at first. Then a cold light suddenly appeared in its eyes, and it almost rushed out. If Ray Minkai hadn't reached out to hold down White Cat State Zero in time, the woman would have been injured by White Cat State Zero. Calm down. State Zero. She's not an enemy. White Cat State Zero's reaction undoubtedly confirmed Ray Minkai's guess. Sharon Epp is odd. Otherwise, as Sharon Epp's emotional provider, that woman, Mei Wang Fong Long, would not have caused the white cat to have such a big reaction. Woo! After a few low growls, the White Cat State Zero gradually relaxed its body and squatted down again. Kai, you want to get information from that woman? Ray Minkai's eyes followed Mei Wang's movements from afar. It wasn't until she stood on the observation deck and looked at the setting sun in the distance that he withdrew his gaze. Maybe, but I'm not sure. After a pause, Ray Minkai continued. If that unknown signal is really related to her, then are we being monitored the moment we entered this city? All of a sudden, the fur on the white cat's body stood on end. Obviously, Ray Minkai's words gave the white cat a sense of crisis. If what Ray Minkai said was true, that they were being monitored by someone hiding in the dark the moment they entered the city, it would mean that they were being watched by someone in the dark. Calm down. State Zero. In fact, this is just my speculation. While Ray Minkai and the White Cat State Zero were discussing the current situation, Mei Wang and Garrett had already reunited on the observation deck below. Mei Wang was surprised and saw Garrett's right hand hanging in front of his chest. Garrett, your right hand? Garrett looked down at his right hand and shook his head slightly. It's just a problem at work. How could it be? Now your right hand. Ray Minkai secretly shook his head as he watched the worried Mei Wang go up and check on Garrett with concern. If there were no accidents, the last character of the melodramatic plot, Young Dai-sun, would appear in a while. However, Ray Minkai could not witness the melodramatic development with his own eyes, because the moment Young Dai-sun appeared, Ray Minkai suddenly felt a strange feeling in his heart. Someone is spying on us. The White Cat State Zero reacted faster than Ray Minkai and rushed out towards the dense forest behind a large group of windmills. Following closely behind was Ray Minkai, who turned and ran after seeing the sparks of the melodramatic quartet. The closer he got to the age of the trees, the stronger the strange feeling in Ray Minkai's heart. It was as if someone was calling out to him. That feeling was almost the same as the messy, unknown signal that appeared on YF-21's communication channel. Sha sha sha. State White Cat Zero, who was rushing in front, suddenly disappeared into the forest. State Zero, be careful. Ray Minkai almost stopped the moment the White Cat State Zero rushed into the forest. However, in the next second, Ray Minkai still followed behind the white cat State Zero and stepped into the strange forest. Sha sha sha. The sound of branches being pulled apart and leaves swaying back and forth could be heard. The rustling sound of broken branches and leaves under his feet could be heard. It seemed to be intertwined into a special melody at this moment, which rang in Ray Minkai's ears for a long time. In front of him, between the dense branches and leaves, the figure of the white cat State Zero was faintly discernible. State Zero, be careful. When Ray Minkai forcefully pushed aside the leaves in front of him, a white light suddenly lit up in front of him. Then, Ray Minkai's vision turned black, and he lost his perception of the outside world. At this moment, on the other side of time and space, Euphemia was accompanied by her royal sister, Cornelia, to the Space Administration. Yesterday, she received an invitation from the Ministry of Justice, Hui, who said that there were some matters that required her to go personally. Welcome to my laboratory. Yes, Her Majesty Euphemia is also a frequent visitor. As for Madame Cornelia, this is also her first time here. Come, please sit here. In the past, Hui, who had never left her hand without a chocolate bar, held a document with both hands. Looking at her, these documents seemed to be for Euphemia. Doctor, what are these documents for? Cornelia took the initiative to ask. Yes, this is the analysis report on the fragment that Ray Minkai gave me previously. Hui pushed the thick stack of documents in front of Euphemia, but did not signal for Euphemia to open it. Instead, she asked Euphemia and Cornelia a question. Her Majesty Euphemia, Madame Cornelia, how much do you know about souls? Souls? Euphemia and Cornelia were stunned. Although they seemed to have an answer in their hearts, they could not say it out loud. As for their reaction, Hui seemed to have expected it. She reached into her pocket and took out a box of chocolate bars. She took out a chocolate bar, but did not bite off a single piece. Instead, she used it as a baton and waved it back and forth as she spoke. Souls. In ancient times, and even in some modern civilizations, they have a special meaning. Civilizations and races that have a special understanding of souls believe that when life ushers in their final destiny, the life experiences and accumulated experiences will all become the light that guides the soul to the next life. Suddenly, Hui, who was talking cheerfully, saw the confused expressions on Euphemia and Cornelia's faces. She immediately coughed a few times to cover up her gaffe. Ahem, I accidentally digressed. In general, compared to these civilizations that see souls as nothing and worship them on a platform, we have a different view. In the universe we live in, there are countless elite scientists. With their hard work, we finally saw through the mystery of the soul. Instead of seeing souls as something intangible, it is better to see them as pieces of data that contain the memories of special life forms. Speaking of this, Hui asked Euphemia a question. Her Majesty Euphemia, I believe that before you fainted, you must have seen something. And these things you didn't tell Ray Minkai, right? He didn't expect that Hui of the Ministry of Justice would be able to expose Euphemia so quickly that even Ray Minkai couldn't discover it. Euphemia's eyes first panicked, but she gradually calmed down. UFFI, did you really see something? Cornelia was very clear about Euphemia's previous coma. But after seeing Euphemia return to the Britannia Empire, Cornelia suppressed the uneasiness in her heart. Now, these uneasiness had been stirred up by the moment of panic of Hui and Euphemia from the Ministry of Justice. In her nervousness, Cornelia also forgot the etiquette that she had always followed. Euphemia lowered her gaze, was silent for a while, and then slowly nodded. Yes, I did see something. It was an image that I've never seen before. In it, I saw Kai standing on a platform built on the clouds with a girl who had the same hair color as me. That's you? UFFI. Euphemia turned around and looked at her royal sister, whose eyes were full of concern, and shook her head slightly. That's not me. It's a woman I've never seen before. Also, in that image, Kai seemed to be very close to her. I'll become his land, and he'll become my land? Just as Euphemia finished speaking, Hui followed up with a sentence that surprised Euphemia. This This is what the girl said to Kai at the end of the image. Sure, Hui of the Ministry of Justice sighed. As expected, this was a noble, pure, and at the same time, a vow that would accompany him for life and would never change until death. According to the relevant records of Xingyao City, this oath shouldn't appear in the world where Rei Minkai came from, where there are mechanical beasts everywhere. However, Sure Hui didn't want to dwell on this issue, and continued the previous topic. Your Majesty Euphemia. The image you saw came from someone else's memory, and the carrier of this memory is this fragment. Euphemia looked at the shard that Sure Hui of the Ministry of Justice had taken out from her pocket and was silent. Cornelia, on the other hand, keenly captured the key point. Doctor, the soul you mentioned before is in this fragment? Yes and no. If this fragment really contains a soul, which means that it has the characteristics of a special life form's memory, then the current Your Majesty Euphemia, I'm afraid, become a second person. Before Sure Hui finished speaking, Euphemia suddenly spoke. Furthermore, from the look on her face, she seemed to have seen through something incredible. Sure Hui shook the chocolate bar in her hand. Yes and no. What kind of person you will become depends on your composition. Composition, Euphemia and Cornelia said in unison. Yes. For example, the chocolate bar in my hand is the original flavor. Sure Hui gestured at the chocolate bar in her hand. If I add some strawberries into this chocolate bar, it'll become a strawberry-flavored chocolate bar. But if I'm still not satisfied, should I do it now? Add more. This was an obvious answer. However, Euphemia had already seen the final answer. Doctor, how many fragments are there in my body now? Not more, not less, exactly 20. The Ministry of Justice's Sure Hui nodded, admiring Euphemia's intuition. In other words, I'm still me. Yes, the current Your Majesty Euphemia is still Your Majesty Euphemia. Sure Hui's expression suddenly became solemn. However, the enemy Rei Minkai is facing now is probably a very difficult person to deal with. In the depths of the forest, there was a beautiful and calm lake. However, the peace of the past had been shattered. The gigantic, ferocious steel lion, whose steel body was covered with sharp blades, was roaring angrily in a low voice. The terrifying roar swept across the surface of the lake, causing ripples. The fishes in the water were so frightened that they swam towards the bottom of the lake, afraid of their deaths. Passing through the forest, it caused a wave of animals to flee. In the sky, birds were flapping their wings in panic and flying everywhere. However, such a terrifying roar could not scare off the white figure confronting the ferocious steel lion. The sun had already set. In the forest that was gradually covered by darkness, the white figure seemed to have become the sun that lit up the forest. The place where she stood was filled with radiance. But behind this radiance, the steel lion became more and more cautious, because there was a person standing behind the steel lion. He was Rei Minkai, who had lost his consciousness and was standing there in a daze. State 0, you are still as irritable as before. The white figure looked past the steel lion and landed on Rei Minkai, who was standing motionlessly by the lake. Come here, my knight. I am here. Roar. Don't even think about it. A roar tore apart the darkness that descended over the forest and tore the white figure into pieces in the next moment. However, the white figure did not disappear. Instead, she appeared in front of the steel lion again. State 0. Do not obstruct me. I am just a knight who called me, a knight who made a vow with me. Shut up. You are not her at all. You are just a meaningless computer program. Suddenly, a scream rushed out from the white figure's mouth and forced the steel lion to take a step back. So noisy. The steel lion had just stabilized its footsteps when Rei Minkai's voice was heard. Kai, you are awake? State 0 turned his head in surprise and looked behind him. Rei Minkai, who was originally standing there in a daze, was shaking his head to clear his mind. His gaze became colder as he looked at the white figure in front of him. You are not her. Vervian, Note 1, is already dead. Sharon Ep. Chapter 509. A noisy wind. A low roar. Thousands of steel beasts lined up in a large square formation, waiting for a certain moment to arrive. On the other hand, the owners of these huge steel beasts all had young and immature faces. 18? No. Among these people who tried their best to straighten their backs and stand in front of their steel beasts, there were too many immature faces, so immature that the commanders standing on the command platform couldn't bear to see them. However, this was something that couldn't be helped. The abyss had already swallowed more than half of the Empire's territory. Every time a place was swallowed, whether it was people, animals, or steel machines, they would all turn into nothingness and cease to exist. This was not a war between countries. Instead, it was a final war that would usher in the disaster of the entire civilization as long as they failed. In the face of this war, everything was illusory. The only reality left was how to let the civilization and the race struggle under this disaster. And in the square formation below, a young man was looking around with an inquisitive gaze. Is this the day when the Abyss Crusade army set off? The owner of that pair of inquisitive eyes was Ray Minkai. He remembered that not long ago, he was still in a certain forest on planet Eden, but now he was in this scene that Ray Minkai could recall at a glance. The Abyss Crusade Army. This was the only counterattack army formed by the Empire after the fall of Sangawu City. And the members of the army were made up of the survivors who had evacuated from Sangawu City to the imperial capital. This was a cruel decision. However, it had nothing to do with Ray Minkai, because the world that used to be had been destroyed. Moreover, the moment Ray Minkai turned around to look behind him, a beautiful figure was standing there, quietly looking at Ray Minkai. That long pink hair fluttering in the wind. That beautiful face with a sweet smile. And that pair of eyes that would become gentle and stagnant every time they fell on Ray Minkai. They were all telling Ray Minkai one thing. She was still waiting for Ray Minkai. However, the figure waiting for Ray Minkai's return quietly shattered in the next moment, turning into streams of light that dissipated before Ray Minkai's eyes. This was not an accident. Ray Minkai had seen through the nature of this world from the very beginning. Enough. Sharon, it's not her. Vivian was dead. That's right. In the battle of the imperial capital, Princess Vivian had already died for her country. As Ray Minkai's cold voice rang out from his throat, the world suddenly shattered. Then, Ray Minkai's eyes lit up as he saw the Long Fong lion confronting a white figure. So noisy, Ray Minkai looked up and stared at the white figure in front of him. Sharon Epp, you're not her. Don't try to trick me with this trick. Ray Minkai stepped on the grass under his feet and came to the feet of the Long Fong lion, staring coldly at the white figure in front of him. As Ray Minkai's cold voice sounded, the white figure showed obvious fluctuations, as if it was constantly shaking like a projection that was disturbed by some kind of interference. What are you talking about? My knight. I'm waiting for you here, waiting for your return. The white figure stretched out his right hand and issued an invitation to Ray Minkai. But Ray Minkai was still unmoved. He knew that the white figure in front of him was not the person who had died long ago, but for some reason had memories of Ray Minkai. Kai fragments. She has fragments. The Long Fong lion lowered its huge head, confirming Ray Minkai's speculation. Ray Minkai closed his eyes, nodded, and then shouted. Sharon Epp, you're just a cold program written by humans. You are not anyone at all. Ray Minkai's cold eyes and sharp words suddenly made the white figure retreat. The fluctuations that constantly appeared on her body madly distorted the illusory figure. No, I am. When she dissipated, she still did not forget to stretch out her right hand to Ray Minkai. On my knight, I am right here. The two unique big and small moons of Eden gradually rose into the night sky, scattering the moonlight on the lakeside, scattering on the position where the white figure was. Kai, under the moonlight, the Long Fong lion turned back into a white cat in the blink of an eye and jumped on Ray Minkai's shoulder. Do you remember her? Ray Minkai was silent for a moment and nodded. Yes, Princess Vermilion Li Cenobuz, the person I once vowed to protect. The name that he once forgot, quietly remembered in the illusion created by Sharon just now. That name had never left Ray Minkai's heart, but at some point, it was drowned by some things, some power. Princess Vermilion. My former master. I didn't expect to meet her in such a way. The white cat's face also showed a trace of nostalgia, but more of it was self-deprecating. No, she is not Vermilion. It's just a computer program with her memory. Ray Minkai's gaze paused on the grass in front of him that was illuminated by the moonlight, and then turned to leave the lake. Memory. The white cat was silent for a moment and shook its head slightly. It seems that the fragment we are going to recover this time is Vermilion's memory? Or is it her soul? If it was just a memory, it would not be able to make Sharon do that kind of action. Although it looked like an invitation between humans, Ray Minkai's gradually recovering memory of Soth's mechanical beast world told him that it was a unique way of communication between him and Princess Vermilion. Sharon, has your biochip been replaced with a fragment of your home world? Ray Minkai reached out and touched the pocket in front of his chest. The chip that he got from Invincible East was quietly sitting there. State 0, when we go back, help me do something. Ray Minkai's memory of the new Edward Flight Test Center kept appearing in his mind. He remembered that in the hangar next to YF-21 and YF-19, there was one of the most important factors in Sharon's incident. Ghost X9. Listening to Ray Minkai's explanation, the white cat's eyes flashed, and it agreed to Ray Minkai's arrangement. The next day, everything was the same. Whether it was Ray Minkai, Garrett, Young Dyson, and the others who had experienced a melodramatic plot, they all acted according to their daily arrangements. The sky above the new Edward Flight Test Center was still busy. However, under this bustle, he was in an extremely tense state of work. In the command center, Garrett and Millard stood on the side and looked at the main screen in front of them. It was a tracking camera installed on the 3 wingmen. With the help of these tracking cameras, the new Edward Flight Test Center could see what was about to happen. It was a test of YF-21's maneuverability. After YF-21 entered the test airspace, the drone cluster that took off first would lock onto YF-21 and launch at least 100 air-to-air missiles. Of course, this seemingly terrifying sea of air-to-air missiles was just a simulated missile. Even if YF-21 was hit, it was just a false alarm. It cannot cause any damage to YF-21. Director Garrett. It's about to start. Millard glanced at the time, then turned back to look at Garrett, who was calm. Well, let's start. I have confidence in Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Garrett nodded, indicating that there was no problem. Millard nodded, raised his hand, and waved gently. The CIC, who had been on standby for a long time, immediately sent a message to YF-21 that had entered the scheduled airspace. Control tower calling Omega-1. In the operation area, all Klesser. The atmosphere is good. Roger. Ray Minkai, who was sitting in the cockpit of YF-21, closed his eyes slightly and allowed his brain to fully integrate with the BDI system. Just at this moment, Ray Minkai's heart raised a trace of concern. But this trace of concern just appeared, it was erased by Ray Minkai. There is no if. If Sharon really wants to appear, the new Edward Flight Test Center will not be able to find her at all. Everything will proceed as usual. Pursuer number 1. Understood. When Young Dyson's voice sounded in the communication, a shadow appeared in the sky above YF-21. That was VF-11 with a tracking camera installed. Its belly was facing the sky, and its back was facing down. After slowly flying over YF-21's head at a very close distance, it suddenly rolled 5 times to the left and gradually entered its original position. This VF-11, who made such a bold maneuver, must be Young Dyson, who was called a lunatic. Unfortunately, the one sitting in YF-21 now was not Garrett but Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai, who knew Young Dyson very well, would not be frightened by Young Dyson's crazy maneuver. Omega-1 calling the control tower, has reached the scheduled airspace, can start at any time. Hearing Ray Minkai's call, Young Dyson was stunned for a moment. The maneuver just now was almost provocative, but the other party did not react at all. What a boring guy. However, this new model looks good. Under young Dyson's scrutinizing gaze, Lei Mingkai's thoughts moved slightly, and the YF-21 accelerated and rushed out a large distance. Naturally, the moment YF-21 turned on the acceleration, the turbulence caused by breaking through the sound barrier immediately made young Dyson, who was following behind, tightly grip the control stick in his hand. He stabilized his body and tried to offset the aftermath caused by the turbulence caused by YF-21 as much as possible. TSK. I thought I was a boring guy. Isn't this very interesting? Young Dyson raised the corner of his mouth, and his left hand pushed fiercely. The rocket-propelled backpack carried by VF-11 was suddenly activated. In the midst of the gushing flames, VF-11, named Pursuer Number 1, rushed out of the formation in the blink of an eye and chased closely behind YF-21. Pursuer Number 1, come back. You just need to prepare the tracking camera. As soon as the VF-11 driven by young Dyson suddenly rushed out of the formation, a small commotion suddenly occurred in the command center. Oomph. How can such a reckless pilot fully utilize the performance of the body? Garrett frowned slightly and mercilessly belittled brave Dyson. Indeed, young Dyson's sudden unauthorized action, no matter who was watching, would leave a very bad impression. The same was true for Colonel Millard. However, he did not immediately issue a recall order or terminate the order. Instead, he chose to continue to observe the situation. In the sky, YF-21 rushed into the central area of the scheduled airspace like a sharp arrow. Following behind was a group of wandering drones. They had already released all the drones named Du Luan and rushed toward YF-21. Director Garrett, I believe the purpose of this test is to verify YF-21's evasion and air combat performance. My expectation is 70% or more. Millard put his hands behind his back and watched the two sides gradually enter the scheduled firing distance on the main screen. 70%. This was a relatively merciful evaluation. However, Garrett's evaluation in his mind was far more than that. Colonel Millard, the result of this battle is 100%. Is that so? That's good. It's never a bad thing to have confidence. Millard smiled slightly and waved his right hand. The Du Luan drone group that entered the firing distance immediately released all the missiles they carried. In an instant, even VF-11, who was in the rear and performing the tracking mission, could see the terrifying number of missiles sweeping across the sky and drawing colorful trails. These colorful trajectories were not for the sake of looking good, but for the sake of capturing the YF-21's movement trajectory in the background made of colorful trajectories when the YF-21 used its high maneuverability to evade the missile. A new high maneuver missile. What a big battle. This was the first time Lei Mingkai faced such a lively battle. Even in the battle with the Beta when he first arrived at Star City, there was no lively scene of him facing hundreds of missiles alone. Despite this, Lei Mingkai did not have a trace of fear. Because the trajectories of these terrifyingly large numbers of missiles had long been captured by YF-21's onboard system and reflected in Lei Mingkai's mind through the BDI system. Now, perhaps using an exaggerated method, Lei Mingkai's mind was a scene of the future. I see it. Lei Mingkai's brain moved. The wings of the YF-21 folded downwards, and it accelerated into the sea of missiles in a head-on manner. His reckless approach set off a wave of exclamations in the command center. I see it. I see it. Now, Lei Mingkai's mind was filled with the calculated trajectories of his movements. As long as YF-21 maneuvered to avoid the missiles according to the trajectory, there was no possibility of YF-21 being hit by these missiles. Now, YF-21's speed was getting faster and faster, and it was not affected by the oncoming missiles at all. It was so agile that it was as if the missiles did not exist in the first place. In just 5 seconds, YF-21 rushed out of the sea of missiles without any damage. The missiles were like headless flies, scurrying around in the airspace behind YF-21. Chapter 510. The perfect 100% dodge made Millard show a satisfied smile. However, this didn't mean that the test would end here. Director Garrett, there are still 20 Duran drones in that airspace. They are equipped with laser cannons. Are you interested in testing the actual combat performance? Millard crossed his arms in front of his chest. His glasses refracted the main screen, making it impossible to see his glasses clearly. Garrett smiled slightly and didn't reject Millard's suggestion. In the dodging performance test, just now, Ray Minkai could obviously display the performance of the YF-21. Therefore, he nodded confidently and replied, "No problem. However, I hope that the laser cannons on the Duran drones can attack in actual combat mode." As soon as Garrett said this, the people next to him raised their eyebrows. Although the YF-21 was equipped with a pinpoint defense system, facing the attack of 20 Duran drones, it would probably be difficult to resist, right? Oh, interesting. Then, after notifying Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, the countdown will start from 3. Understood. Ray Minkai had already heard the movements of the command center. He didn't have any opinions about this, because he also wanted to see the actual combat performance of this YF-21. Omega 1, please answer. This is Omega 1, ready at any time. While Ray Minkai was talking to the command center, the Duran drones that were hovering near the YF-21 had all gathered at the 6 o'clock direction of the YF-21. This position was the most fatal weakness in aerial combat. Whether it was a new or old pilot, as long as the enemy bit him to death at the 6 o'clock direction, his fate was undoubtedly equivalent to stepping into the gates of hell. He could either struggle or use all his life experience and knowledge to fight for a glimmer of life and reverse the fate of certain death. The 20 Durans were respectively in small groups of 2 or 3 behind the YF-21, waiting for the final order to be issued. Omega 1, ready. The countdown starts from 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1, attack. As soon as the command center issued the attack order, the Duran drones that had already launched their laser cannons and locked onto the YF-21 immediately fired out bursts of rainstorm-like laser beams. However, the YF-21 that was locked onto by them only lowered its fuselage, then abruptly pulled up its nose, and with another acceleration, it was able to escape from the attack axis of the Duran UAVs. As the YF-21 rapidly ascended, a cone-shaped cloud appeared in front of the YF-21 and submerged the YF-21 in the blink of an eye. However, the moment the cloud submerged YF-21, a pair of strong and powerful steel hands pulled the cloud from the inside out, revealing the YF-21 that had transformed from a highly mobile fighter into a humanoid form. In the gradually dissipating clouds, YF-21, who had transformed into a human form, flipped in the air and dodged a Duran drone that was biting him at 6 o'clock. The moment YF-21 brushed past the drone, he immediately launched an attack. In the frenzied roar of the attack, the Duran drones that were rigidly biting YF-21, according to the program, were like moths to a flame. They constantly rushed into the attack range of YF-21. Even if a considerable number of Duran drones could discover the intention of YF-21 in the first place, and with the help of the program, they could make an emergency retreat in time. The next moment, they would once again bite YF-21 in the 6 o'clock direction, but it was still useless. The glass mask of the helmet continued to reflect the light of the Duran drones being hit and exploding. Under the control of Ray Minkai, YF-21 easily and accurately destroyed the Duran drones. From a distance, YF-21 seemed to have become the weaver of a death feast, wantonly scattering the light that represented death in this airspace. Fortunately, YF-21's opponents were just drones controlled by cold programs. On the other side, young Dyson, who had been following closely behind YF-21, finally managed to throw YF-21 to the back of his mind. After getting rid of the simulated missile that was targeting his VF-11, he finally arrived at the airspace where YF-21 and the Duran UAV were fighting. Damn it, there's only one propulsion engine left. This is troublesome. History was repeating itself once again. Even though Ray Minkai was not sitting in YF-21 right now, young Dyson, who was not to be outdone, still came to this combat airspace with the help of the only rocket propulsion engine left. Yom? The moment VF-11 came here with a long trail of black smoke, Ray Minkai noticed its existence. Sorry, I'm not Garrut. Ray Minkai, who knew what young Dyson was going to do next, did not choose to destroy the last Duran drone and end this test. Instead, with a thought, YF-21 changed from its human form back to its high-mobility fighter form. In one breath, it rushed into the sky at a 90 degrees angle. The Duran drones, which had lost their target, followed YF-21 the second after it rushed into the sky. YF-21 and the Duran drones, one after another, forgot about VF-11 that had just arrived in this airspace and ignored its existence. Damn it, can I catch up? Young Dyson unwillingly abandoned the last rocket propulsion engine in the midst of the ear-piercing alarm. He wanted to let the rocket propulsion engine that was about to explode affect the aircraft's flight posture. Oh, I can't catch up. In less than 10 seconds, YF-21 rushed into the clouds. As the BDI system switched views, Lei Minkai saw that the only thing that appeared below YF-21 was the lone Duran UAV. The VF-11 piloted by Brave Dyson was nowhere to be seen. Then it's time to end this. J-turn. The nose of the YF-21 that rushed into the clouds turned. In the blink of an eye, it had completed the maneuver from nose up to nose down. Then, the YF-21 was in a straight line with the Duran UAV that was rushing up from below. At this moment, whether it was YF-21's laser cannons, machine cannons, or the laser cannons of the Duran drone, they had all locked onto their opponent. Then, the attacks of both sides lit up the airspace. Whether it was from top to bottom or from bottom to top, the laser beams were constantly intertwined. It was slow to say, but quick to act. YF-21, which was flying straight down from the sky, was getting faster and faster. It was so fast that the aiming program of the Duran drone could not complete the various parameter adjustments in a short period of time. As the black shadow flashed, the Duran drone that could only shoot out seemingly fierce laser beams in vain, but could not hit YF-21, suddenly exploded. All that was left was YF-21, which had plunged into the clouds. Omega-1, calling Control Tower. Duran drone destroyed. Mission completed. Control Tower, Roger. Omega-1, thank you for your hard work. Now, you can return. Roger. Omega-1, returning now. Young Dyson was behind YF-21, which was heading back to the New Edward Flight Test Center. Although the VF-11 was a good body, when faced with the terrifying performance of the latest body, YF-21, it was already struggling. Not to mention the actual combat situation, it was difficult to even catch up to YF-21. When will my new mech arrive? I've seen enough of that arrogant boy's face. Unfortunately, there were still about 5 days before YF-19 returned to the factory for maintenance. In these 5 days, young Dyson was probably still following YF-21 and fiddling with the camera. YF-21, who completed the test mission, was welcomed by the entire YF-21 team. Moreover, Garrett, who returned to the hangar, also nodded at Ray Minkai. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Colonel Millard is very satisfied with YF-21 and your performance. We are already one step ahead of the plan. I hope you can keep it up in the future. Understood, but we can't take it lightly. After all, his body hasn't been delivered yet. Ray Minkai calmly glanced at VF-11, which landed on runway 2, and said meaningfully. The corner of Garrett's mouth moved, but he couldn't say anything. Garrett not only learned about young Dyson's flight skills from Ray Minkai, but he also learned more detailed information from the background system. If it weren't for the fact that the current YF-21 test pilot was Ray Minkai, Garrett would probably repeat his original fate. By the way, Director Garrett, I have a request. I wonder if you can help me? Ray Minkai's sudden request made Garrett stunned, but he still nodded and agreed. When the two moons, one big and one small, around Eden rose into the sky, the Atlantis Stadium, which was about to host Sharonev's concert tour, was still busy. As the performance time approached, everyone's nerves became more and more tense. It's really busy. Mr. Matthew, In the VIP room of the stadium, Matthew, who was in charge of developing Sharon Epp, personally welcomed the arrival of two distinguished guests. Moreover, other than Matthew and a few of his confidants, no one else knew that there would be two distinguished guests at the Atlanta Stadium. Even Mewing Fong Long, Sharpa Epp's emotional provider, didn't know. Yes, after all, the concert is about to begin. Miss E. Matthew smiled slightly and looked back at the concert frame that had been set up below. Speaking of concerts, have you ever held one before? Mia, sitting on the sofa, the woman in a red gauze dress, smiled slightly and looked at the girl with long pink hair next to her. Well, yes, that was a long time ago. What Matthew didn't expect was that the voice of the pink girl turned out to be a heavenly voice. Almost instantly, Matthew confirmed the fact that the pink girl had held a concert before. Although he had never seen such a girl with such a heavenly voice in the Earth's circle, or even in the various colonial planets, among the colonial ships. Miss E., you really make me feel sorry. If we could have met earlier, maybe Sharon's evolution would have gone further. Matthew sighed, and his probing gaze was unabashedly on the pink girl. Oh, is that so? It seems that Mr. Matthew has taken a fancy to Mia's voice, but unfortunately, Mia won't be able to show her talent on this stage. So, I can only apologize to Mr. Matthew. No, Miss, you don't have to. To be honest, what you have provided me is indeed beyond my imagination. In the face of Miss E's apology, Matthew waved his hand again, and then changed the topic to the deal between the two sides. Oh, is that so? It seems that Mr. Matthew is very satisfied with the deal between us. Then I am relieved. Miss, he smiled slightly. Yes, if it weren't for Miss, I couldn't imagine that there was anything in the world that could replace the biochip. Thanks to you, Sharon Epp's evolution speed has exceeded my expectations. Facing Miss E., who had made a deal with him, Matthew gradually removed the mask of a rigorous researcher on his face and revealed his true face. Everything is going well. However, I hope that there will be no accidents during the operation. Matthew suddenly frowned when he heard Miss E's words. Miss E., in the previous trial run, there were some accidents. Oh, Miss E. and the pink girl sitting next to her looked at each other, and the pink girl who had been silent asked again. Mr. Matthew, can you describe the accident you found? Matthew pondered for a moment and tried his best to describe the accident that happened before. When I installed the chip, Note 1, given to me by Miss E on Sharon Epp's host computer, I suddenly found a data disorder and the system could not function normally. How long did it last? The pink girl asked again. About half an hour. Strangely enough, while we were still confused, the system that had fallen into chaos suddenly returned to normal and began to operate stably again. Matthew's answer made Miss E and the pink girl look at each other again. Don't worry, Mr. Matthew. This is Sharon Epp adapting to our chip. Now, isn't her growing speed of evolution also proof of this? There were still a lot of doubts in his heart, but in the face of Sharon Epp's accelerated evolution, Matthew suppressed the doubts in his heart. After all, by accepting Miss E's kindness, Matthew didn't have to take the risk of making a deal with a certain black hand behind the scenes. Yes, Sharon Epp's evolution speed has indeed accelerated a lot. After completing the next concert, Sharon Epp will inevitably evolve to a new height. At that time, please allow me to express my most sincere gratitude to our two distinguished guests. No need for that, Mr. Matthew. As long as you can transfer Sharon Epp's emotional data to us at that time, it will be fine. This is our deal. Matthew's promise didn't make Miss E and Mia happy. On the contrary, they clearly understood what they needed. Of course, but other than that, I will still express my most sincere gratitude to our two distinguished guests. On the day that Sharon Epp finished, Matthew raised his right hand and placed it on his heart. He gave a most solemn bow to Miss E and Mia while saying sincerely. Chapter 511. There was a sea of people. On the night of Sharon Epp's Galaxy Tour, the crowd near the Atlanta Stadium once again reached a new peak. Not to mention vehicles. Even pedestrians could not get within 1 kilometer of the Atlanta Stadium. Of course, the audience with concert tickets could follow the special passage opened by the staff and go all the way from the foot of the mountain to the front of the stadium. Sure enough, it was a good idea to ask director Garrett. Lei Mingkai, who previously wanted to enter the Atlanta Stadium, stood in front of the stadium gate and looked at the sea of people at the foot of the mountain that could almost flatten the entire mountain. He could not help but sigh. Kai, you thought of using that big guy's interpersonal relationship in advance. White Cat Zero also saw the drama between Garrett, Mei Wang, and Young. It just did not expect Ray Mingkai to use this relationship to get the concert tickets. No, that's what I thought of after the incident at the lake. At that time, Ray Mingkai did not think so far ahead. After the incident with Sharon that Ray Mingkai was familiar with, Ray Mingkai began to use all the forces around him to pave the way for his mission. Suddenly, a very unhappy voice sounded behind Ray Mingkai. Ray Mingkai, it's you, bastard. Ray Mingkai, who heard the voice, looked back and saw Young Dyson, and beside him was director Yang Nguyen, who was in charge of the YF-19 development project and CIC's Lucy. Oh, I didn't expect Lieutenant Dyson to be interested in Sharon Epp. Looking at Young Dyson's hand that was almost pointing at his nose, Ray Mingkai just smiled faintly and did not care too much about Young Dyson's behavior. Who's interested in that kind of robot? Before Young Dyson finished speaking, Yang Nguyen reminded him softly. Young, that's not a robot. It's a virtual idol. Yes, whether it's a robot or a virtual idol, Sharon's songs are very good, aren't they? Yang Nguyen and Lucy suppressed Young Dyson's dissatisfaction with one sentence after another. TSK, forget it. Just take it that I'm here to play with you today. Under the joint attack of Yang Nguyen and Lucy, Young Dyson finally turned around and took the lead to walk into the field. That reckless guy is really easy to understand. Looking at Yang Nguyen and Lucy who chased after him, the White Cat State Zero once again looked up at Young Dyson and said faintly, "It is precisely because of this that he is Lord Young." Lei Mingkai shrugged and said with a sigh, "Master Young? What's that?" However, White Cat State Zero did not understand what Ray Mingkai said. It's nothing. It was getting late. It's time for you to take action. Kittens are not allowed at the concert. Ray Mingkai's casual words drew the White Cat's attention away from Old Young's title. Who's a kitten? Kai, you bastard. Say again. In an instant, the fur of the White Cat State Zero on Ray Mingkai's shoulder stood up. A low growl came from its throat as if it was threatening Ray Mingkai and wanted Ray Mingkai to apologize. However, Ray Mingkai did not fall for the White Cat State Zero's trick. For Ray Mingkai, the ferocious White Cat State Zero was just a bluff. He raised his right hand, pinched his fingers, and lifted again. The White Cat State Zero, whose neck was pinched, suddenly went limp. Seeing this, Ray Mingkai smiled slightly. He was helpless against the White Cat State Zero's ability to take advantage of the situation. Then, Ray Mingkai put the White Cat State Zero on the side of the flower bed. Kai, just you wait. Amidst the clamor, the White Cat State Zero disappeared into the flower bed like a wisp of smoke. The rest was up to the White Cat State Zero. Lei Mingkai, on the other hand, entered the concert alone to see if Sharon, whom he had met that day, would appear again. As a warm-up, rhythmic music continued to play, leading Sharon's fans to enter the venue according to the instructions and find their seats. Among these people, there was no lack of famous people, fanatical fans, and even passers-by. They formed a huge stream of people like ants, constantly walking out of the stadium's entrances, quickly and accurately flooding the entire venue's seats. In less than 10 minutes, the flooded seats quietly lit up with a faint light and converged into a beautiful flash image that fluctuated with the rhythm of the opening music. Standing in the increasingly lively venue, Ray Mingkai was surrounded by fans who responded to the enthusiastic atmosphere. It's really lively, but where would Young Dyson and the rest be? Ray Mingkai followed his memory and slowly searched a corner of the venue with his eyes. This was bound to be a somewhat difficult task. However, this was something that could not be helped. After all, Ray Minkai was now in a VIP seat close to the stage. Garrett's ability to get things done was indeed very reliable. While Ray Minkai was waiting for the concert to begin and looking for the location of Young Dyson and the rest, a meeting about the future of YF-21 began in the new Edward Flight Test Center. In Millard's office, Millard sat sideways behind the desk and turned his head slightly to look at Garrett, who was standing in the middle of the room. He looked at Garrett from top to bottom and deliberately stopped for a moment on Garrett's right arm that had been removed from the bandage and had almost recovered. "Director Garrett, congratulations on your recovery." As an opening remark, Millard first congratulated Garrett on the recovery of his right arm, and then began the theme of the meeting. "Director Garrett, how's the progress of YF-21? Garrett nodded slightly, thanked Millard for his congratulations, and said, "According to the current progress, our YF-21 can already enter the next stage of the actual combat simulation test. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai is an excellent test pilot. His ability, whether it's the YF-21 development team led by me or everyone in the new Edward Flight Test Center, is obvious to all." Garrett's first statement made Millard slightly surprised. In Millard's prior speculation, Garrett, who cared more about YF-21 than anyone else, should make the decision to return to the position of YF-21 test pilot after recovering, or hesitate. Looking at Millard's glasses that refracted the light, Garrett stood straight and spoke his reasons straightforwardly. "Colonel, indeed, I really want to return to the position of YF-21 test pilot, but I can't make this decision. During this period of testing, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai's ability exceeded my expectations. Compared to me, he is more suitable to be the test pilot of YF-21. "Oh, is that it?" Millard turned his seat and faced Garrett. He supported his chin with both hands and waited for Garrett's answer. If it was only for this reason, Millard would not easily believe that Garrett would give up on his own initiative. Garrett was silent, but he knew that Millard was not someone who could be fooled at will. "Colonel Millard, do you know the rumor in the Jetlotti bloodline?" Garrett, who was silent for a long time, finally said the real reason behind it. That was the flaw hidden in the Jetlotti bloodline. Under certain circumstances, Garrett, who had the Jetlotti bloodline, would fall into a state similar to Berserk, thus launching a violent attack on everything around him, regardless of whether it was friend or foe. For ordinary people, this might be able to be controlled by drugs, but for the YF-21 piloting the latest advanced airframe, especially using the brainwave control technology of the BDI system, a pilot with a mental defect was undoubtedly an invisible time bomb that could cause a disaster at any time. Millard had already thought of this when Garrett admitted it himself. Millard, who connected everything, also understood why Garrett made the decision to let Ray Minkai continue to be the test pilot of YF-21. "Director Garrett, I understand. With the ability of Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, YF-21 is indeed likely to win the Supernova project. Then, today's meeting will end here." After getting Millard's approval, Garrett was also relieved. "Yes. Then, Colonel, I'll take my leave first." But before Garrett turned around and took a few steps, Millard suddenly called Garrett. "Director Garrett, maybe my next words will be a bit abrupt, but in my opinion, the most suitable position for Director Garrett should be the researcher who developed YF-21. Garrett fell into silence again after hearing Millard's words. This time, Garrett did not respond to Millard's words. He just nodded silently, walked out of the office, and disappeared behind the gradually closing door. Whether it's young Dyson or Garrett, they are both easy to understand, man. It's just that Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai seems simple, but in fact, he is a person who is difficult to see clearly. Millard got up from his seat, stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked at the night sky of the new Edward Flight Test Center outside the window. He sighed secretly. At this moment, Ray Minkai, who welcomed the start of Sharon's concert, didn't know that he almost lost his identity as the test pilot of YF-21. However, even if Ray Minkai noticed it, he probably didn't have time to pay attention. That was because Sharon had appeared. In the mysterious song, Sharon appeared in a deep sea. It was an illusory realm that resembled the legendary Sea of Origin. In the dreamland, Sharon appeared in the midst of a splash of water. However, the moment Sharon appeared on the stage, Lei Mingkai could clearly sense that Sharon's gaze was focused on him. That was not the result of the program's guidance. It was also not caused by Beauty Wang's subconscious hidden behind Sharon's illusion. Instead, someone was manipulating everything behind Sharon's back. Vervian. The moment Ray Mingkai and Sharon's eyes met, the name appeared in Ray Mingkai's mind again. On the other side, the white cat State Zero, who had successfully sneaked into the backstage of the venue, nimbly passed through the aisles and effortlessly found the destination. It's here. Nimbly following the pipe hidden in the ceiling, the white cat State Zero arrived at the location of Sharon's mainframe. The condescending white cat State Zero immediately noticed the woman it had seen before. She was Beauty Wang Fong Long, who was lying on a bed made of precision equipment. 3 red lights shone on her forehead, eyebrows, and fingers. This system? It's very similar to the BDI system developed by the big guy. As the golden eyes moved, the white cat State Zero noticed the huge mainframe in the center of the venue. There was no doubt. There was no hesitation. The moment the white cat State Zero's gaze landed on the mainframe, the white cat State Zero understood that what it was looking for was there. Who is it? Suddenly, a cold voice pierced the air in the venue and directly attacked the white cat State Zero. TSK, have I been discovered? In an instant, the white cat State Zero jumped back a distance, but when it turned around to run, it abruptly stopped its movement and screamed at the top of its lungs. Meow! Amidst the sharp screams, there was a trace of fear and panic, causing the people below to frown. Miss E, what's wrong? It seems to be a stray cat that ran in. Matthew gestured to the left and right. When his men went up to confirm the situation, he also looked at the mysterious woman, Miss E, who suddenly came to the venue where Sharon's mainframe was located. Miss did not answer. She just looked at the people who went to check the situation, until the 2 men with scratches on their faces endured the pain and brought back a struggling white cat. She slowly nodded. I'm just a little bored sitting in the room. Mr. Matthew, you don't have to care about me. You go to your thing first. Mrs. Gaze paused for a moment on the struggling white cat waving its sharp claws, then turned around and left. After glancing at Miss, who inexplicably appeared and inexplicably left, Matthew waved his hand and no longer paid attention to the 2 men who were struggling with the white cat. He focused his attention on the concert. Knowing that they did not complete the task, the 2 men did not dare to act on the spot. They could only leave the venue with the white cat. But just as they walked out of the venue, the white cat that they caught suddenly opened its mouth and fiercely bit their fingers. Under the severe pain, the hand that caught the white cat suddenly loosened. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the white cat disappeared in front of the eyes of the 2 unlucky men. Damn stray cat! Don't let me see you again. Otherwise, I'll teach you a lesson. The men's curses echoed in the corridor, but White Cat Zero was not in the mood to care about these trivial matters. Sure enough, it's really Miss Q's group. White Cat Zero remembered very clearly the way Miss looked at it just now. Even now, White Cat Zero could clearly remember the moment when that gaze fell on it. The fear that rose from the depths of its heart still shook the White Cat Zero's body. If it were not for the White Cat Zero's quick wits and trying to pass through the situation with cuteness, the concert would have become a battlefield filled with blazing flames of war. Chapter 512. Inside the venue, the atmosphere of the concert had entered a new stage. As the mysterious rock and roll songs were played one after another, the emotions of the audience in the venue were stirred up. However, in this increasingly heated mood, Ray Mingkai still maintained his vigilance. From the moment Sharon appeared, he felt a faintly discernible gaze wrapping around his body. Moving his gaze up, Lei Mingkai saw that the mysterious and illusory Sharon from before had now been replaced by a charming and lovely young lady. Under this delicate and lovely face, Sharon was now playing the role of an innocent girl who was passionately in love on the phone. However, Lei Mingkai felt that something was amiss with this face of his. Mingkai, where are you? At this moment, the anxious voice of the white cat State Zero suddenly sounded. State Zero? Did you discover anything? Rei Mingkai's face changed slightly, but quickly returned to normal. Yes, it's still a big discovery. A white figure rushed out from the darkness and jumped onto Rei Mingkai's legs. If it wasn't for the fact that all the audience's attention was on Sharon, State White Cat Zero would have been discovered by others. The golden eyes of the white cat State Zero flashed with a nervous light, and its front paws revealed a trace of sharp cold light. Now, the white cat State Zero could be said to have entered battle mode. Miss Q? Rei Mingkai knew that the only person who could make the white cat State Zero put on such a posture was probably Miss Q, or someone related to her. No, it's not Miss Q. It's a woman who is called Miss E. From her body, I could smell the exact same scent as Miss Q. Moreover, the mainframe known as Sharon Ep really does use technology related to fragmentation. While speaking, the white cat State Zero turned its head and looked at the image of the delicate girl through the holographic projection above the venue. In other words, she to a certain extent is... However, before Rei Mingkai could finish his words, Sharon Ep's image suddenly fluctuated. Strangely enough, apart from Rei Mingkai, no one in the audience around him noticed this anomaly. Something strange. White Cat State Zero's gaze changed. It immediately looked left and right, thinking that something unexpected had happened. Relax. This was not a surprise. It's just someone messing with us. Rei Mingkai reached out and patted the head of State Zero, the white cat, and then looked at the upper left of the venue. That was where Young Dyson, Yang Nguyen, and Lucy were. Sharon Ep's image fluctuated. Yang Nguyen must have hacked into Sharon Ep's system and forced her to do what he wanted. This might be the origin of the whole incident. No, Kia, she's looking over here. White Cat State Zero exclaimed and repeatedly patted Rei Mingkai's thigh. Rei Mingkai looked up. Sharon Ep, who should have been controlled by Yang Nguyen and turned her head to look at Rei Mingkai, actually lowered her head to look at him. To be precise, Rei Mingkai's gaze had already met Sharon's gaze. This unexpected situation made Yang Nguyen, who had personally hacked into Sharon Ep's system, extremely surprised. What's going on? Sha Lang should be looking over here. Yang Nguyen, who was very confident in his skills, could not believe what was happening in front of his eyes. The system that he had successfully hacked into was actually not listening to his instructions. What kind of situation was this? Yang Nguyen, who could not accept the fact, tried harder and gave out instructions again. This time, he succeeded. Sharon, whose back was facing Yang Nguyen and Young Dyson, suddenly changed and looked at the area where Yang Nguyen and Young Dyson were. Hey, what are you doing? Young Dyson was shocked and hurriedly turned his head to look at Yang Nguyen. This has nothing to do with you. Look, Sharon is looking at me. Yang Nguyen, who had proven that there was no problem with his skills, did not care about what had happened just now, nor did he care about what would happen to his actions. After Sharon Ep's system was hacked into by Yang Nguyen, the backstage suddenly fell into a tense atmosphere. Uncontrollable cameras, uncontrollable communication waves, all seem to be telling one thing. Quickly solve this for me. This concert is not allowed to have any accidents. Matthew secretly gritted his teeth, his eyes constantly moving between Sharon's mainframe and Mei Wang. This was Sharon Ep's first concert after installing the chip, and also Sharon Ep's first step towards perfection. He would not allow any accidents to happen. However, Matthew did not know what was happening to Mei Wang from Sharon's perspective. The moment Mei Wang saw Young Dyson quarreling with Yang Nguyen, the emotions that had been hidden in the depths of her heart in the past, but now erupted because of this opportunity, suddenly hit Sharon Apu's main program like a tide. The world thought that Sharon Ep was the perfect virtual idol, but they did not know that the real Sharon Ep was composed of two people. First of all, the virtual image of Sharon Ep appeared in front of the world, but this image only had a singing program and lacked an emotional program. In order to make up for this lack, Mei Wang, as the emotional provider, appeared in front of the world as the person in charge of Sharon Epps' Galaxy Tour. Now, Mei Wang, who should have remained calm and provided emotional support for Sharon Epp, could not control her long-suppressed feelings and let them continue to churn in her heart. What's going on? Yang Nguyen shuddered and seemed to have realized that he was exposed to the camera, so he immediately turned off the control program. However, Sharon, who was in midair, did not return to normal as he expected. Instead, she continued to lower her head and look at a certain area below. This strange phenomenon made Yang Nguyen frown. This shouldn't be happening. Yang Nguyen's hands began to itch. Sharon's current performance was indeed unexpected. It was as if, the moment he stopped the program, Sharon suddenly had her own consciousness and looked in the direction she wanted to look. Director Yang, if we're discovered, we'll be arrested. After this interruption, the woman in the trio, Lucy, also came back to her senses. That won't happen. Before I crack Sharon, I won't be arrested. Not to mention being arrested. Yang Nguyen was very confident about this, and now his interest was completely aroused. He really wanted to know Sharon Epps' true face now. Kai. In the midst of the song, there seemed to be a voice calling for Ray Minkai. However, before Ray Minkai could react, the holographic projection in midair suddenly changed. Psychedelic, seductive. The images related to these nouns were on the verge of appearing. The figure of Sharon, who had transformed into a mermaid, was separated by a distance, moving from the bottom to the top of the venue. Wherever he passed, the audience would be stunned and mesmerized by him. Her delicate hands were gently raised, full of faces eager for Sharon's comfort. At this time, Yang Nguyen, who finally couldn't hold back anymore, once again made a small move. Come on, let me see your true face. Sharon, come here. Yang Nguyen, who was determined to have his own way, once again activated the control program, making the Sharon, who were supposed to patrol the entire venue, gather in front of him one by one. Among the overlapping figures, Sharon's body gently bent and swam toward Yang Nguyen. It's a success. Before the sound of surprise could be heard, Sharon's figure suddenly stopped. Then, with a wave of her beautiful fishtail, two figures once again appeared. One unswervingly swam toward Yang Nguyen and Young Dyson's position. As for the other one, it quickly swam around the court and rushed toward the VIP seats. In the soft light, the mermaid Sharon who suddenly appeared came to the VIP seats and landed in front of Ray Minkai. Woo! A low warning sounded from White Cat State Zero's throat, but Ray Minkai pressed its head down. Don't be impatient. She means no harm. As Ray Minkai's gaze moved, he saw an unexpected scene. Sharon, who was supposed to give Young Dyson a romantic calamity, turned into fragments in a stream of light, leaving only the figure in front of him now. The mermaid, who seemed to have walked out of a marine myth, gently bent her body and circled around Ray Minkai. Then, she reached out her hands and cupped Ray Minkai's face. But before the next thing happened, the music suddenly changed, and the mermaid Sharon disappeared in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. The audience didn't have a trace of regret for Sharon's sudden disappearance, but was once again attracted by Sharon's reappearance. They didn't know what had happened backstage, and they didn't want to know, because in their eyes, Sharon was still beautiful and charming. The audience was willing to indulge in Sharon's singing, unable to extricate themselves. The singing program is back to normal. The data is stable. Miss Mei Wang's physical data is normal. There are no abnormalities. The staff reported a series of normal reports, but their foreheads were covered in sweat. Finally, they slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, Sharon Epp, who was supposed to perform according to the scheduled program, suddenly experienced a program malfunction. Not only did the huge data suddenly become chaotic, even Mei Wang, who was the emotional provider, was affected. But in the midst of this misfortune, Sharon Epp's performance was still normal, which was a great blessing. Hurry up and maintain the stability of the performance program. After the performance, immediately conduct a major inspection. Matthew reached out and pushed his glasses so that others wouldn't see his anxious gaze. Sharon Epps' sudden accident caught Matthew off guard. According to the scheduled program, even if Sharon had the mysterious chip installed, such a major malfunction would not occur. This was something that Matthew had also been assured by Miss E. But what happened? Mr. Matthew. Miss E once again mysteriously appeared in the backstage. Sharon's data became chaotic again, but it has returned to normal now. Miss E, this concert can be completed smoothly. Matthew nodded and said calmly, "Is that so? But I think that lady needs to rest. The impact of the chip is not something that ordinary people can bear." Miss E's words made Matthew frown slightly. "I understand. After the concert, I will let Miss Mei Wang have a good rest. Thank you for your concern, Miss E. Okay, then we'll take our leave first." Until the end of the performance, Sharon didn't act strangely like before. This made Ray Minkai and White Cat Zero puzzled. State Zero, can you feel the presence of the fragment? Standing outside the stadium, Ray Minkai looked at the special passage that was isolated and guarded by the staff. "No, I can't feel it. It seems to have been hidden by someone." White Cat Zero was silent for a while, then shook its head. "Is the trail broken? But there is still a chance. Let's go." The next day, young Dyson, who had finished dressing, stood at the entrance of the hangar and made gestures unique to pilots during flight simulation. He gestured the possible maneuvers that could be done next. After gesturing for a while, young Dyson saw Ray Minkai, who had also changed into a pilot suit. "Kid, it's not too late to admit defeat." Today was the day that YF-19 arrived. Young Dyson, who had been following YF-21 for a long time, could not wait to pilot the legendary new aircraft. "Is that so? But if we don't compete, how will we know who will win in the end?" Ray Minkai smiled lightly and retorted young Dyson's provocation. "Hey, that's true, but I hope you won't cry in the end." While Lei Minkai and young Dyson were provoking each other with their words, the shielding panel in the hangar slowly opened with the sound of a machine activating. YF-19. From this moment on, this generation of godly armament that accompanied young Dyson to create a legend finally appeared. "Hey, you finally appeared. Cute little guy." Young Dyson raised his hand to touch the smooth armor of YF-19 and turned to look at Ray Minkai, who was leaning on the side of the hangar entrance. "How is it? Are you scared by my cute little guy?" "Not bad, but my YF-21 is not bad either." Ray Minkai looked at YF-19 calmly. He was not scared by the complete legend at this moment. "Oh, looks like I have to show my real skills. Right? Cute little guy. Otherwise, our opponents will laugh at us." In the roar of the engine, young Dyson and YF-19, who had obtained the permission to take off, soared into the sky, like a sharp sword that could split the sky, and rushed into the deep space outside the atmosphere. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, we will enter runway 03 and take off 180 seconds after YF-19 took off. The test mission this time is a maneuver test. Do you understand? Looking up at YF-19 that rushed into the clouds at an extremely fast speed, Ray Minkai's headset also sounded with Garrett's voice. "Maneuver test? Is this a show of strength?" Thinking of the amazing space painting that young Dyson was likely to do next, Ray Minkai smiled helplessly. Garrett, even if he lost the qualification to pilot YF-21 now, it was inevitable that he would fall into a situation of comparing himself with his love rival. What should Ray Minkai do? Chapter 5:13. The moment the YF-19 took off, it went straight into the sky. In just 48 seconds, it had reached its power limit. Such a powerful acceleration performance was beyond young Dyson's imagination. It had even left his VF-11 far behind. With such a powerful acceleration performance, even if he encountered the YF-21, it would not be inferior. Recalling the YF-21 that used its performance to show off in front of him, young Dyson's heart was burning with passion. He couldn't wait to compete with the YF-21. In the edge area between the atmosphere and space, the YF-19 turned off its thrusters and allowed the gravity of the planet to pull the fuselage back from the edge of the atmosphere. Moreover, young Dyson boldly allowed the YF-19 to freely rotate its fuselage under the attraction of gravity. After the nose of the fuselage was completely pointed to the ground below, young Dyson had a carefree smile on his face. He pushed with his left hand, and the turned-off propulsion engine was turned on again, giving the YF-19 a powerful thrust again. "This is really unbearable, little cutie." Feeling the powerful thrust of the YF-19, young Dyson's mood became more and more carefree. In addition to being carefree, young Dyson relied on the powerful technology that he had trained through many years of life and death on the battlefield to identify the performance of the YF-19 in his own way. However, the action that was beyond the scope of the mission made young Nguyen, who was sitting nervously in the command center, hold the keyboard tightly and loudly curse young Dyson's unauthorized action. Unfortunately, young Dyson didn't hear young Nguyen's curse at all. Even if he heard it, young Dyson wouldn't take it seriously. Otherwise, young Dyson wouldn't have the nickname Troublemaker General on his head. Garrett, who had just accompanied Ray Mingkai to the hangar and watched the YF-21 slide onto the runway under Ray Mingkai's control and return to the command center, was silent. This strange scene made Millard feel a little strange. Ever since Garrett and young Dyson reunited, as long as the two met, there would definitely be a burst of cynicism. Although they did not get physical, everyone in the new Edward Flight Test Center already knew that the two were not on good terms, but no one inquired about it. Even Millard, who was in charge of the Supernova project, let it be. Perhaps, in his opinion, the discord between the two could become a factor to increase the competitiveness of YF-19 and YF-21. "Colonel, YF-21 is ready." After a moment of silence, Garrett opened his mouth again and requested permission from Milad to take off. "Yes, let's begin. I'm looking forward to the next maneuver test." Milad nodded. In fact, according to the plan, the YF-21 had already passed the maneuver test. Therefore, today's maneuver test was different. This was because YF-21 was not the only one participating in this test, but YF-19 and YF-21 were doing it together. This was a whim test. Although this was young Dyson's first time driving a YF-19, it was a more direct test for the higher-ups behind scenes. In just a short week, after Ray Mingkai joined the YF-21 development team, they had completed 2/3 of the test. This kind of progress had already exceeded the progress of the YF-21 originally driven by Garrett. Facing the schematic diagram that symbolized the progress of the test, not only Garrett, but even General Gomez, who stood behind the scenes of the Supernova project, thought that Ray Mingkai was the most suitable pilot for YF-21. At the same time, in this consensus, the main leaders who led the Supernova project began to quietly tilt the scales in their hearts towards YF-21. Today, this sudden maneuver test might be the test that determines the future direction of the Supernova project, right? Millard didn't know this, and Garrett didn't know either. They only knew that today's forced maneuver test might represent something, but it wasn't something they could decide. Young Dyson's shouts continued to come from the communication channel. Every time it sounded, the power in young Nguyen's hands would tighten by half, and his mind would be tense. He was scared. Since YF-19 participated in the Supernova project, it had gone through 4 pilots. Before these pilots became YF-19's test pilots, they all had extremely high ratings in their respective fleets. However, such excellent pilots had no choice but to be defeated. They either ended up crippled or dead on the spot. Now, seeing young Dyson's crazy approach, young Nguyen suddenly felt despair. That beast! What the hell is he doing? Today's flight is extremely important for us. At this time, the sound of YF-21 taking off came from the other side. Omega 1. Ready. Permission to take off. The picture on the main screen changed, and it was YF-21's figure that directly rose into the sky in a vertical manner. It's over. YF-21 is coming to show his strength. Young Nguyen regretted it now. He regretted that before young Dyson took off, He didn't tell young Dyson the news he learned from the secret channel, so that this guy who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth would keep his temper. Too late. Too late. Everything was too late. The takeoff of YF-21 was undoubtedly the moment that YF-19 was about to usher in its destiny. However, Ray Minkai, who was sitting in YF-21, didn't have these messy thoughts. His current idea was to use all his strength to have a memorable flight with young Dyson. YF-21. Altitude 38,000. About to converge with YF-19. The high-precision tracking camera installed, especially for the Supernova project, firmly locked onto YF-21's figure, and the distance between it and YF-19 was displayed at the bottom right of the screen. Millard nodded and picked up the walkie-talkie from the table next to him. Omega-1, let's go. Altitude 40,000. When Millard's voice sounded in the communication channel, YF-21 had already reached the scheduled airspace. The ground below had turned into an arc, and the blue sky had also turned grayish-blue. Even at a higher altitude, a huge painting had appeared in front of Lei Mingkai. Dragonbird? While feeling refreshed by the super performance of YF-19, young Dyson was yelling while piloting this new type of airframe for the first time. He completed a picture of a bird unique to Eden in this sky, a huge bird with a wingspan of 20 meters after reaching adulthood. Right now, only the finishing touch was left. However, in the next second, YF-21, which rushed high in the sky, flipped and rushed down toward the Dragonbird cloud below. The scene of YF-19's sharp turn and fall just now reappeared, but this time it was done by YF-21. Moreover, under the powerful performance of YF-21's wings made of flexible units that could be bent at will, YF-21, which folded down its wings, suddenly transformed into a high-speed rocket into orbit. It whistled past YF-19. The strong wind set off by the rapid descent tore most of the Dragonbird cloud that had already taken shape the moment YF-21 passed by it. What? Bastard! Originally, when YF-21 suddenly whizzed past in front of his eyes, young Dyson didn't react. However, the moment YF-21 raised a strong wind that tore apart the Dragonbird cloud, YF-19 rushed out in the blink of an eye and bit YF-21. Bastard! Don't you know that destroying other people's painstaking masterpiece is a very annoying thing? YF-21 and YF-19, one in front and one behind, kept passing through the sky. Even though Lei Mingkai couldn't see young Daishuan's face, he could tell from young Daishuan's voice that young Daishuan was furious. What an easy man to understand. Under the helmet, the corners of Ray Mingkai's mouth curled up slightly. The BDI system, which had been deeply integrated with Ray Mingkai, immediately reacted to Ray Mingkai's brainwaves. The YF-21 raised its nose and used a rolling maneuver to avoid the YF-19 that was closely following behind it. Bastard! Don't think that this kind of little trick can win against me. A simple roll wouldn't make young Dyson fall for it. The moment YF-21 pulled up its nose, young Dyson had already discovered Ray Mingkai's intention and immediately responded. In other words, he used the same roll to fight back against Ray Mingkai and his YF-21. However, Ray Mingkai didn't seem to have a roll war with young Dyson. Instead, he pulled up the nose again, and then after a half roll, he suddenly exploded with speed and quickly flew away from young Dyson's eyes. Anger was anger, but in this short period of time, young Dyson finally understood Ray Mingkai's strength. Even if young Dyson had YF-19 now, he would still be able to fight with Ray Mingkai with full spirit. This discovery not only didn't make young Dyson feel surprised, it even made him feel like he had met his match. Thinking of this, young Dyson was so angry that he laughed, but his heart calmed down instead. You really are a bastard. You still want to provoke me. Kid, you're looking down on me too much. Perhaps in other matters, young Dyson would show a reckless face, but when it came to flying, young Dyson would bet everything he had on it. The engine was roaring, young Dyson's heart was screaming. The moment the two voices intertwined, YF-19 once again bit YF-21. It's catching up. The eyes under Ray Minkai's eyelids slowly moved, and an image was formed in his mind. YF-19, which was once again biting YF-216, suddenly appeared. A trace of a smile appeared as Ray Minkai's mouth curled up, and YF-21, which was flying in front, suddenly turned into G-form. The sudden increase in wind resistance suddenly caused YF-21's speed to sharply decrease. Once again, relying on the resistance brought by the wind resistance, YF-21, which had turned into G-form, reversed its attack and defense, allowing YF-19, which was following closely behind, to rush to the front. However, Ray Minkai's little trick had already been seen through by the energetic young Dyson. Using all these little tricks, in the blink of an eye, the moment YF-19 passed YF-21, YF-19's G-form appeared. Without hesitation, as if there was some kind of tacit understanding, when the two new airframes reduced their speed in G-form, both sides raised their hands, intending to aim at each other. But in the next moment, they changed from their G-form back to their high-mobility form. They burst out with full speed and rushed into the sky in a vertical climbing posture. Moreover, while they were climbing rapidly, YF-21 and YF-19 were actually trying to use the rolling maneuver to put each other in their crosshairs. Looking up from the new Edward Flight Test Center on the ground, four white tracks were constantly circling and climbing, just like the mythical world tree that extended toward the supreme sky. In a short period of time, the two newest fighter jets, under the control of the pilots on both sides, made such dazzling and gorgeous maneuvers that made people sweat. The entire new Edward Flight Test Center once again fell into the moment when Ray Minkai piloted YF-21 and broke Garrett's speed record. So gorgeous! Sitting in CIC's seat, the blonde, freckled Lucy felt that she was about to be fascinated by the gorgeous maneuvers displayed by YF-21 and YF-19 when they worked together. While she was fascinated with a woman's powerful sixth sense, Lucy seemed to have noticed that something was wrong. The two people fighting in the sky did not seem to have the murderous aura that she had imagined. It felt like they were cooperating. Lucy, who was frightened by her own thoughts, frowned. Then, she raised her hand and pressed the button that controlled the switching of the tracking camera back and forth. Finally, she saw a shocking scene. Everyone look! The image of the third tracking camera. Under Lucy's control, the image on the main screen switched and shrank several times in a row. When it directly accommodated the airspace where YF-21 and YF-19 were fighting endlessly, a larger and more spectacular cloud appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Huge wings with a sharp mouth, a high head, a majestic body, slender and dangerous eagle claws, strong and advantageous hind legs. This was the image of the spectacular cloud that appeared in front of everyone's eyes. What is that? In the entire command center, no one seemed to recognize the true identity of the cloud. Griffin, when everyone, including Yang Nguyen and Garrett, the two top development engineers, were at a loss, Colonel Millard touched his chin and said a name that no one present had ever heard of. Legend has it that before the First Interstellar War, there was such a monster in the legend spread in the area called Greece. Eagle head, lion body, wings, and its name was Griffin. Although humans on Earth had won the First Interstellar War with Lin Ming-mei's song, too much of human history, culture, and legends have been lost in the Interstellar War. Looking at his subordinates, who were unfamiliar with the name Griffin, Millard could not help but sigh. Keep your spirits up, everyone. This test is not over yet. Millard's reprimand was effective. Although they were a little curious, they still immersed themselves in their work, waiting for the result between Ray Minkai and Young Dyson. However, this test did not seem to have a result. Interesting. YF-19 is indeed a little cutie, and so are you. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. After drawing a dazzling picture in the sky again, the anger in Young Dyson's heart that was provoked by Ray Minkai still disappeared without a trace. What was left was a comfortable feeling. Should I feel grateful, or should I scold you? Lieutenant. YF-21 flipped, bypassed the cloud named Griffin, and flew to the new Edward Flight Test Center. That kind of thing is up to you. Just when we have a real contest. As long as the mission allows. Tisk. Sure enough, you are a boring guy. Although he said this, the YF-19 piloted by Young Dyson formed a temporary formation with the YF-21 and returned to the new Edward Flight Test Center. Chapter 514. Test Mission Record File 1. 2040. Date unknown. Earth Standard Time, 2100 hours p.m. YF-19 and YF-21 carried out a night shooting test under the orders of Colonel Millard, the person in charge of the Supernova Project. After a fierce competition, the YF-19 and the YF-21 passed the night shooting test by hitting all the targets. Test Mission Record File 2. 2040. Date unknown. Earth Standard Time, 7 o'clock a.m. YF-19 and YF-21 once again carried out the obstacle shooting test. In the simulated city built by the engineers in the depths of the desert within half a year, YF-19 obtained all fixed targets, 99% moving targets, and 1 accidental kill. YF-21, on the other hand, had hit both stationary and moving targets, and had killed all of them without any mistakes. Test Mission Record File 3. 2040. Date unknown. Earth Standard Time, 1300 hours a.m. The weather was clear. The altitude was 35,000. This was a simulated battle using only the fire control radar. As long as the two competing parties were locked on by the other party's fire control radar for more than 3 seconds, then the locked party would be judged to have failed. The pilots of YF-19 and YF-21 gave it their all and staged a classic ace aerial battle in the sky above the new Edward Flight Test Center. In the end, the battle started at 1300 hours a.m. until the moon rose halfway in the sky. Neither side had a winner. Therefore, this test was judged to be a draw. Under the faint light, Garrett sat on the sofa and looked at the groups of data flowing on the screen in front of him, as well as the small video window at the bottom right. Since knowing that Young Dyson was a 3-time winner of the Roy Fock Medal, Garrett raised Young Dyson's ability to the upper limit he thought, but it turned out that Garrett still underestimated Young Dyson. While Ray Minkai proved his strength, Young Dyson also proved himself and how suitable the YF-19 he piloted was for the Supernova Project. What a strong opponent. Garrett sighed secretly and was about to turn off the screen in front of him when his hand suddenly stopped. An uncontrollable, destructive emotion frantically struggled in the depths of Garrett's body, as if in the next second, a terrifying beast that had been sleeping in the body of the Jetlati star for tens of thousands of years would take Garrett as its own. Garrett struggled to stand up from the sofa and crawled to the side of the desk next to him. He used all his strength to raise his trembling right hand and tried to open the drawer that was close at hand and could be easily opened normally. However, Garrett, who was constantly being ravaged by the destructive emotions, could not resist the destructive emotions that came faster and more violently than usual, even though his eyes were red and he kept gritting his teeth. Suddenly, he clenched his trembling right hand into a fist and slammed it on the desk. Boom! Zila! Under the fierce force, the desk was suddenly torn apart by a burst of electric light. Moreover, in the broken desk, the bottle containing the medicine to suppress Garrett's destructive emotions was quietly rolling on the ground. However, even if the bottle of medicine finally appeared in front of Garrett's eyes, Garrett could no longer control his right hand and picked up the life-saving medicine bottle. Because, under the heavy punch that tore the desk apart just now, the destructive emotions that Garrett had been suppressing finally broke through Garrett's control. They drove Garrett, who could no longer control himself, to wantonly destroy everything around him. The red blood eyes, the ferocious face, and the hands that were pierced by the broken furniture were the true biological weapons, the true appearance of the Jetlati. Garrett, Ray Minkai, who had just passed by Garrett's room, immediately notified the command center when he heard the strange sound and asked them to inform Malad. Then, Ray Minkai immediately let the White Cat, State Zero, unlock the door and rushed in. Unexpectedly, Ray Minkai, who rushed into the room, became the enemy in Garrett's eyes. Roar! Garrett, who was under the control of his destructive emotions, could no longer recognize that the person standing at the door was Ray Minkai. In his mind, everything that appeared in front of him was destroyed. Kai, this big guy is crazy. White Cat, State Zero, jumped in front of Ray Minkai and tried to transform into a wild lion to beat Garrett down. Wait, State Zero, let me take care of this. Ray Minkai's eyes narrowed slightly. He did not expect that he would actually see the moment when the violent factors that caused the Iron Triangle in his youth flared up. Roar! Strangely, Garrett did not immediately attack Ray Minkai, but stood in place and kept roaring. That appearance made White Cat, State Zero, smile coldly. Did he really turn into a beast? This instinct is like a beast. Although State Zero was stopped by Ray Minkai and no longer transformed into a wild lion, the dangerous aura emitted from its body had far exceeded the crazy impact of Garrett. State Zero, go and get that bottle. I'll need it later. As his gaze moved, Ray Minkai saw the bottle of medicine rolling on the ground beside the broken desk. Presumably, that was the medicine that Garrett used to suppress his destructive emotions. Kai, be careful. This big guy doesn't recognize people when he goes crazy. As soon as State Zero moved, Garrett's crazy gaze followed the White Cat until State Zero went to the broken desk and pressed the bottle of medicine under its feet. Then, Garrett turned and pounced on Ray Minkai. Garrett, wake up. Although the momentum of Garrett, who was like a small mountain, was quite astonishing, Ray Minkai only needed to turn slightly to avoid Garrett's collision. Moreover, Ray Minkai stretched out his right foot to trip Garrett when he passed by him, and the small mountain body fell to the ground with a loud bang. Roar! The pain of falling to the ground made Garrett even crazier. However, Ray Minkai quickly used his knee to press against Garrett's spine and forcefully twisted Garrett's swollen arms, firmly locking them behind Garrett's back. Roar! 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 Even if Ray Minkai pressed him to the ground, the crazy Garrett was still struggling, and the strength of his struggle was getting stronger and stronger. State Zero, quick, coming. White Cat State Zero waved its front paw, and the cap of the medicine bottle was sent flying. In the blink of an eye, several pills flew into Garrett's mouth under the White Cat State Zero's paw. Sorry, Director Garrett, but even if the pills were sent to his mouth by White Cat State Zero, Garrett was still struggling crazily and had no intention of swallowing them. Seeing this, Ray Minkai, while ensuring that he could suppress Garrett, stretched out his right hand and forced Garrett to swallow the medicine that suppressed his destructive emotions. The medicine was effective. After Malad and the others who had just heard the news came here, the crazy Garrett had already fallen into a deep sleep under the effect of the medicine. Berserk factor? Sigh. It seems that my guess came true. Looking at Garrett being carried away by the medical staff, Milad sighed secretly. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, it's all thanks to you. Otherwise, Director Garrett would have to lie in bed for a while. No, it's just a coincidence. Ray Minkai shook his head. He didn't want to take all the credit. Is that so? Then let's take it as that. But if Director Garrett is admitted, I'm afraid the progress of YF-21 will be slightly behind. No, Colonel Milad. Now that the test of YF-21 is almost completed, the remaining project does not require Director Garrett to do it personally. Seeing that Milad intended to postpone the test of YF-21, Ray Minkai immediately voiced his thoughts. Milad pondered for a moment, then nodded. Fine. No matter what, we need to see Director Garrett's results before making a decision. After that, Milad reached out and patted Ray Minkai's shoulder, then turned and left behind the medical team. Looking at Milad's back, White Cat State Zero pondered for a moment. Kai, don't you think there's a hidden meaning in this person's words? It should be time for the Supernova project to be terminated. From Milad's tone, it was not difficult for Ray Minkai to guess that the progress of the GeoSTX-9 hidden in the new Edward Flight Test Center should be close to completion. State Zero, how's your mission going? Almost there. It's just that in the past few days, the drone has not been in the hangar. At the mention of the mission that Ray Minkai arranged for it before, White Cat State Zero confidently described the process of completing the mission. Relying on its current form of a super cute white kitten, White Cat State Zero often swindled food and drinks in the New Edward Flight Test Center. It even swaggered around the various hangars. Even if it was discovered, it would at most let out a few frightened cries, then turn around and flee. No one suspected that this cute kitten was actually a cat that spied on intelligence. Not in the hangar? Looks like it's nearing the end. State Zero, time is of the essence. Next, we might have to go on a warp trip. There was no other reason for the disappearance of GOTS X9 from the New Edward Flight Test Center. It was pulled to the distant orbit of planet Eden for a combat test. The final result of this test was a symbol that the Sharon incident had entered its final stage. Warp? Are we going back to Earth? White Cat State Zero had collected a lot of information during its time roaming around the New Edward Flight Test Center. Naturally, it knew which big event was about to happen. In the second day, Ray Minkai, who had changed into a pilot's uniform, did not see young Dyson standing next to YF-19 as usual. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, you guys are really lucky. Not only is the director lying in a hospital, but one of our pilots is also dragged in. Seeing Ray Minkai looking around, Young Nguyen, who was already in a bad mood because young Dyson ran to the hospital without a word, immediately began to mock him. And the lieutenant went to the hospital? Ray Minkai was stunned for a moment, but he understood. However, instead of worrying that young Dyson would not come back, it was better to worry about whether the hospital would be torn down by the two enemies who were extremely jealous of each other. This is the control tower. Special situation. Today's test will be suspended. From now on, all personnel will have 24 hours of free movement. Suddenly, the surrounding people subconsciously looked in the direction of the broadcast. For a moment, everyone was confused. Why did they suddenly give everyone in the New Edward Flight Test Center a holiday? Fortunately, Colonel Millard is really sensible. Although Yang Nguyen didn't understand why there was a sudden holiday, he still breathed a long sigh of relief. After all, the YF-21 team, which could fly, was also on the list of holidays. Therefore, YF-21 and YF-19 were once again on the same starting line. A holiday? Ray Minkai glanced at Yang Nguyen, who was gloating, then looked up at the sky. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the atmosphere that provided a comfortable living environment for all living beings, and he saw the spaceship that had just completed the GHSD X-9 combat test mission and was beginning to return. It was not difficult to guess that this sudden holiday was probably to cover up the success of GHSD X-9. Dismissed. Those who are interested in visiting our director Garrett can sign up on the spot. As soon as they heard that they were going to visit Garrett, the entire YF-21 development team immediately packed up their things as quickly as possible. After leaving a few guard behind, they followed Ray Minkai and went straight to the hospital where Garrett was. However, when everyone arrived at the hospital and found Garrett's room under the guidance of the nurse, they saw a man and a woman standing on both sides of Garrett's bed. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other for a while before pushing Ray Minkai out. "You bunch of heartless bastards." Ray Minkai cursed in a low voice, then walked to the door of the ward and looked around. "Lieutenant, how is Director Garrett's condition?" He's fine. He's so good that he has the strength to reject my kindness." Young Dyson glanced at Ray Minkai and said sarcastically, "Young, what are you talking about? Garrett is just—" The woman standing on the right side of the door just refuted young Dyson and stopped talking. "I'll go in and take a look." The awkward atmosphere made Ray Minkai helpless, so he also chose to escape from this atmosphere. As soon as he entered, Ray Minkai saw Garrett sitting on the bed and looking back at the scenery outside the window. Judging from his expression, there didn't seem to be any major problems. "You're here." Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. "Come and sit down. I have something to tell you." Unexpectedly, Garrett didn't ask him to leave, as young Dyson said. Instead, he motioned for Ray Minkai to sit on the chair beside the bed. "Director Garrett's condition seems to be very good. Everyone can rest assured now. After Ray Minkai sat down, he said this. It's just an old illness. It's not a big deal. It's just that after this illness, I've thought about some things clearly. Kai, the injury on my right hand was not an accident. Perhaps it's possible that someone is accumulating power for this. Chapter 5:15. Artificial. Ray Minkai, who had just sat down, stood up again and looked at Garrett in surprise. Ray Minkai also knew the reason for Garrett's accident. After some investigation, the new Edwards Flight Test Center concluded that the reason for the instability of the airborne system was that the YF-21 malfunctioned during the test flight. Garrett, who was the test pilot at the time, was injured. But today, this conclusion was overturned by the person involved, Garrett. Garrett saw Ray Minkai's surprise. He just nodded faintly, indicating that Ray Minkai did not hear wrongly. Yes, maybe it was artificial. Immediately, Garrett fell into his memories. At that time, the YF-21 I was flying was at an altitude of 21,000. The weather was good, and there was no possible wireless interference. Wait, Director Garrett, you mean wireless interference? With just a short sentence, Ray Minkai had already realized what Garrett would say next. Yes, wireless interference. Sure enough, Garrett admitted this. I remember that I had just finished communicating with the control tower before the mission. When I was about to start the mission, the YF-21 lost control. No, to be precise, the BDI system suddenly disconnected from me. This is the conclusion of the new Edward Flight Test Center for that accident, isn't it? Although Garrett's words were somewhat inconsistent, overall, it was still generally consistent with the conclusion given by the new Edward Flight Test Center. Yes, that's right. However, I hid one thing. Second Lieutenant, if you continue the YF-21 test mission, I'm afraid you will encounter the same accident. Garrett's gaze was calm, but there seemed to be a trace of uneasiness in the depths of his calm. What kind of accident was it? Director Garrett, I'm afraid it has something to do with this? Ray Minkai was a little confused and slightly gestured outside the door. There, Yong Dyson and Mei Wong were guarding outside the door. No, it's not directly related. It's just that I remembered some old things. It's all thanks to the chaos last night. When Garrett said this, he was lonely. However, within this loneliness, there was also a sense of guilt. As soon as he saw Garrett's appearance, Ray Minkai already knew why Yong Dyson and Mei Wong were kicked out of the ward. Perhaps, during last night's violence, Garrett had already recalled the upheaval that led to the disbanding of the Iron Triangle. These are no longer worth mentioning. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Listen, Garrett had no intention of continuing to sink into the past. His mind was now more focused on the accident that caused him to lose the YF-21 test pilot qualification. When the BDI system disconnected from me, I heard a noise. Garrett's brows gradually furrowed, as if he was trying hard to recall the voice he had heard. However, no matter how hard Garrett tried, he couldn't remember the meaning behind the sound. The only thing he knew was that this sound could be the real culprit behind the disconnection of the BDI system. I can't remember the content of the voice clearly, but I'm sure it was a melody, a piece of music. As soon as Garrett's words came out, Ray Minkai's mind suddenly trembled. The failure of the BDI system, as well as the music and singing, these several factors superimposed together had already pointed to a certain existence. That was Sharonep. If the previous accident of YF-21 was blamed on Sharonep, then it meant one thing. The fragment installed on Sharonep's mainframe was earlier than Ray Minkai expected. Long before it came to Eden, it began to control the same kind around it. BDI system Ghost X9. I'm afraid it has been invaded by Sharonep. Ray Minkai did not speak, but raised his gaze and looked straight into Garrett's eyes. At this moment, the two sides did not need to speak. Just a glance was enough to know what the other party meant. Then I'll go first. Director Garrett, leave the test flight of YF-21 to me. I'm counting on you. Second Lieutenant. Garrett nodded and watched Ray Minkai leave, no longer paying attention to Yong Dai-sun and Mei Wong, who were guarding the door and trying to enter the room. Let's end the mistake of that year. Outside the door, Ray Minkai had just dismissed the people who came to visit Garrett, and young Dai-sun came to find him. "Hey, Ray Minkai, how is Garrett now? That bastard won't let me in, so what if he's sick? Young, don't talk too much. Garrett may be too tired and doesn't want to see guests." Mei Wang, who came over later, quickly persuaded young Dai-sun. But she didn't know that when she came over, Ray Minkai had been looking at her. Mei Wang Fong Long, Sharon Epps' agent, and also her emotional provider. The identity of the agent was well known, but the identity of the emotional provider was a secret that only Sharon Epps' team knew. Ray Minkai, who suddenly opened this secret, caught Mei Wang off guard and stunned for a moment. "You bastard, what are you talking about?" Young Dai-sun was somewhat puzzled, but he, who was reckless by nature, chose the most direct way, which was to grab Ray Minkai and force him to tell the truth. "Calm down, Lieutenant. This is a matter between the two of you. I have no intention of getting involved. It's just that Director Garrett might have remembered something." Ray Minkai raised his hand and pushed away young Dai-sun's hand that was grabbing his collar, and said softly that made the two of them take a step back. You mean?" Ray Minkai shook his head slightly, took a look at Garrett's ward, and left young Dai-sun and Mei Wang there. Although it was melodramatic, Ray Minkai knew that they could handle these things well. Ray Minkai had more important things to deal with now. The low sound of the engine roared from the ring highway. The car carrying Ray Minkai sped along the highway, heading straight towards the Atlantis Stadium on the island in front of the big waterfall. "Is there any use for you to rush over now?" White Cat State Zero, whose front feet were on the dashboard, raised its head and looked at the stadium in the distance. "I don't know, but I have to go and take a look. If Ghost X9 has been completed, then Sharon Ep should also be heading to Earth." Ray Minkai held the steering wheel with both hands, paying attention to the traffic on the highway. "If that's the case, I'm afraid there's no one there." White Cat State Zero's worry was not wrong. When Ray Minkai drove the car into the parking lot of the Atlanta Stadium, he found that the surroundings were not as noisy as he expected, but seemed to be unusually quiet. Leaving so soon, Mei Wang, Ray Minkai, who quickly got out of the car and walked to the gate of the stadium, frowned as he looked at the locked gate. If Sharon Epps' team had left, then why was Mei Wang still on Planet Eden? Did Mei Wang deliberately ask for leave? Or did the team leave Mei Wang here as a chess piece that could be abandoned? Whether it was the former or the latter, Ray Minkai felt that it was possible. However, no matter what, Ray Minkai had to enter the stadium to see what was going on. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed in the green belt not far from the stadium. "Where? Kai, there's a situation." After the lesson in the forest, White Cat State Zero did not dare to run away from Ray Minkai without permission. Instead, it chose to turn around and jump, lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder, and move together with him. Ray Minkai glanced at the locked stadium, but still chose to chase after the white shadow. In the green belt, the white shadow was in front, and Ray Minkai was behind. Both of them were getting faster and faster. In just a few minutes, they had crossed the green belt of the Atlantis Stadium and arrived at the forest further away from the city. Looking at the branches in front of him, Ray Minkai suddenly had the illusion that he had returned to the forest behind the windmills. Would he once again see the neatly arranged Soth's mechanical beasts and his comrades who had died in the Abyss invasion if he lifted the branches in front of him? "Kai, she's right behind this tree." White Cat State Zero raised its head and stared at the lush green branches and leaves in front of it. Ray Minkai paused for a moment, but still reached out and lifted the branches in front of him. The lake again. At the moment when the branches were lifted under the bright sunlight, Ray Minkai saw a familiar lake and a white figure standing by the lake. "You haven't left yet?" Sharon Ep. Even though he had doubts in his heart, Ray Minkai only asked this one sentence. "Left." The white figure trembled slightly, as if waiting for something. "My night is here. Why should I leave?" "You're not Vermilion." Sharon Ep. The white figure once again regarded Ray Minkai as her knight, but Ray Minkai still mercilessly denied this statement. "How cold? Kai, my knight. If I'm not Vermilion, Then who am I? The white figure stretched out her right hand and pointed at herself. Is it her? Is it her? Or is it her? In the midst of the questions, the white figure's appearance kept switching back and forth between a mermaid, a short-haired girl next door, a noble and holy goddess, a majestic queen, and an elegant princess. In the end, her appearance even changed to that of Mei Wang. Or am I her? A pitiful human woman. She clearly loves one person, but she likes another person. Lei Mingkai stared at the white figure in silence, constantly changing his appearance. Even if at some point, the white figure's appearance changed to that of Princess Vermilion, who had died in the Abyss invasion, she was unmoved. You're sharing app. It's a virtual program created by humans. No! Rei Mingkai's cold words suddenly provoked the white figure. The white figure kept shaking, as if it was a human's behavior when they were angry. I am... Suddenly, the white figure's voice became distorted, and even the clear outline and appearance became blurred. In the blink of an eye, the white figure disappeared in front of Rei Mingkai. However, the moment she disappeared, Rei Mingkai heard such a sentence. Earth, there are more people on Earth, and they will know who I am. The white cat stepped on the green grass under its feet and came to the place where the white figure stood just now. It raised its head and looked at the sky above. She's gone. Kai. But she's waiting for us on Earth. But the white cat state zero shook its head and looked back at Rei Mingkai. No, Kai. She didn't leave obediently. At this moment, a hurried ringtone suddenly sounded. It's me. Please speak. Rei Mingkai took out the communication device from his pocket and opened it to respond to the message from the other end of the communication channel. Second Lieutenant Rei Mingkai. This is the control tower. Now our new Edward Test Flight Center is under attack. Please return to the base immediately. Please return to the base immediately. The anxious voice from the other end of the communication channel made Rei Mingkai's gaze freeze. Even behind this voice, Rei Mingkai heard some explosions. I got it. Return immediately. Give me 5 minutes. Rei Mingkai quickly responded and cut off the communication on the spot. State 0. Understood. The white cat State 0 jumped and transformed into a wild lion. Come up. Kai. 3 minutes. Rei Mingkai gave 5 minutes, but the wild lion State 0 gave shorter time. In the blink of an eye, the steel lion rushed into the forest and quickly returned to the desert where the new Edward Test Flight Center was located. At this time, the new Edward Test Flight Center was under attack from an unknown source. Have you contacted them? Millard stood in the command center and looked at the sky that was already burning with war. It was a group of enemies of unknown origin. Whether it was the information shared by the people of planet Jetlati or the Earth's own information system, there was no such enemy. In just a few minutes, they had already occupied more than half of the new Edward Test Flight Center's airspace. If it were not for the Air Force stationed at the new Edward Test Flight Center to fight back, the new Edward Test Flight Center's airspace would be under the enemy's control. We have contacted them. First Lieutenant Yong Dyson and Second Lieutenant Rei Mingkai will return in 5 minutes. The CIC quickly responded to Millard's inquiry and finally gave a piece of bad news. Colonel, but 3 minutes ago, our new Edward Test Flight Center lost contact with the fleet stationed in the synchronous orbit of Planet Eden. Communication interference? It seems that the enemy came prepared. But why did they interfere with the new Edward Test Flight Center's communication after Yong Dyson and Rei Mingkai issued the recall order? It seemed that these enemies came for Yong Dyson and Rei Mingkai. Chapter 516. It was an enemy that looked like a Y shape from the front, but its body was made up of many irregular polygons from the side. Moreover, while it was flying at high speed, its body formed by irregular polygons had lines that were constantly flowing. At the same time, as long as one was close enough, one could hear the strange sound of the air vibrating. Although the strange body did not seem to have many places for weapons to be mounted, in the center of the front end of the irregular polygonal body, there was a powerful laser cannon. Most of the planes lost in the new Edward Flight Test Center were caused by this laser cannon. Apart from that, what made the garrison of the new Edward Flight Test Center even more terrified was that even though the enemy's body could be penetrated by the VF-11, no. Even worse, the VF-4's cannons, they were able to crash into the VF fighters in a barbaric manner without suffering any injuries. This huge contrast made the pilots of the new Edward Flight Test Center feel helpless when faced with a strange enemy charging at them. One was not a problem, but the moment after every collision, there would always be at least 3 or more strange enemies attacking together. In a short period of time, 2/3 of the explosions in the new Edward Flight Test Center were caused by the VF-11 that was killed by the besieged VF-11. What kind of enemy is that? David Dyson, who was driving his motorcycle on the highway, had already seen the battle taking place in the sky above his head. The battle in the sky was not limited by terrain and other factors like the battle on land. As long as the weapon could hit the enemy, then the entire sky could be used as a battlefield. Therefore, in front of young Dyson's eyes was the tragic battle where the new Edward Flight Test Center's pilots were sacrificed. Damn it, why aren't they here yet? Looking at the tragic battle, young Dyson's heart was already burning with anxiety. But even so, young Dyson was still a certain distance away from the new Edward Flight Test Center. Suddenly, a low engine roar came from behind him. Young Dyson's eyes moved and looked at the rearview mirror. He found a rather cool supercar appeared next to him without him knowing. In the low growl of the engine, the supercar quickly caught up to the motorcycle driven by young Dyson. "Lieutenant, get on. I'll give you a ride." The car window rolled down, and Ray Minkai's face appeared in front of young Dyson's eyes. "Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai." Young Dyson stared blankly for a moment before smiling and stopping his motorcycle by the side of the road. Then, he rushed towards Ray Minkai's supersport car. However, the moment young Dyson sat in the front passenger seat, he saw the white cat lying next to him, and his action slowed down by half a beat. "Don't worry, Lieutenant, State Zero will not harm you." It seemed that the experience of the white cat disfiguring young Dyson with State Zero had left a shadow on him. In the end, after the white cat Zero took the initiative to move aside, young Dyson sat firmly in the front passenger seat. "Sit tight." The supercar sped toward the new Edward Flight Test Center again. On the way, young Dyson wanted to ask about Ray Minkai's whereabouts after he left the hospital, but in the end, he didn't ask. Of course, even if young Dyson asked, Ray Minkai wouldn't say. Could it be that lame Minkai had to confess that a minute ago he was sitting on a huge steel lion that had traversed the entire forest and arrived in this vicinity? Only after discovering the supercar he was currently driving did the scene of him meeting young Dyson just now occur. If he said it, would young Dyson think that Ray Minkai was joking? To avoid unnecessary trouble, Ray Minkai remained silent and pushed the supercar's speed to the limit. The roar of the engine echoed in the desolate desert for a long time, alarming the strange enemies hovering in the sky nearby. "Kai, be careful. We are being watched. Second Lieutenant, those strange fellows have discovered us." White Cat Zero and young Dyson's warnings sounded one after the other. The only difference was the difference in their minds and ears. The wind whistled, and the strange, vibrating sound swept over the moment the strange enemies swooped down from the sky. Whether it was Ray Minkai or young Dyson, they both frowned and gritted their teeth to hold on. What the hell is this thing? The new weapon of the Jetlati? Or the new toy of the anti-unified army? As the vibrating sound faded away, young Dyson leaned out of the window and looked at the strange enemies that rose again. "Jarmo." Ray Minkai said a name with a solemn face. Yes, when these strange enemies were fighting with the VF fighter at high altitude, Ray Minkai couldn't see them clearly. But when they swooped down and tried to destroy the supercar with a strange sound, Ray Minkai finally saw the true face of the enemy. There was no doubt. There was only surprise. The moment he saw the true face of the strange enemies, Ray Minkai already knew the names of these strange enemies. Jarmo. It was one of the weapons that the FAF named Type 1 from the villain jam in the Battle Fairy Snowwind. But why would Jarmo appear in the fortress world? Suddenly, Ray Minkai thought of one, No, it should be said that it was the only possibility. That was the person behind the scenes who brought the fragment to Matthew and installed it in Sharon Epps' mainframe. Kai, are you saying that our existence has been discovered? Raymond Kai's fluctuating thoughts were noticed by White Cat Zero. No, I'm not sure yet. It's probably a test. State Zero, don't make a move. In the previous concert, White Cat Zero was indeed discovered. But relying on White Cat Zero's cleverness, they barely got through that stage. Now, even if the other party was suspicious, they should not know the relationship between White Cat Zero and Ray Minkai. But why would the new Edward Flight Test Center be attacked? Ray Minkai secretly gritted his teeth, but he could not understand. If it was a drone, Ray Minkai could immediately determine that it was done by Sharon Epp. But it was an enemy that was very similar to Jarmu. Virum. Suddenly, a light flashed in front of his eyes. There was a large hole in the road ahead, and the moment the hole appeared, a strong shock wave swept through everything around, forcing Ray Minkai to use all his strength to stabilize the sports car to avoid being overturned by the shock wave. Be careful. Those weird guys are running away again. Young Dyson quickly stretched out his hand and turned the rearview mirror up and down, aiming at the sky behind the sports car, and saw that the enemy similar to Jarmu had already bitten them. Sit tight. New Edward is in front of us. Ray Minkai threw all the puzzling thoughts to the back of his mind and used all his skills to drive the sports car, accelerating towards the new Edward Flight Test Center's gate in front of him. Virum. Ray Minkai's plan was good, but the enemy would not do as he wished. Boom. In this race against time, the enemy's laser cannons constantly grazed the sides of the sports car, blasting large holes in the road. Suddenly, 2 missiles fell from the sky, swept across the front of the sports car, and directly blew the weird enemy behind the sports car into pieces. Boom! In the midst of the deafening explosion, Ray Minkai's sports car rushed through the gate of the new Edward Flight Test Center in one breath, and rushed to the gate of the hangar with wounds and black smoke all over its body. Ray Minkai and Young Dyson had already jumped out of the car in the midst of the ear-piercing braking sound. After looking at each other, they each rushed to the hangar where their beloved machines were parked. White Cat State Zero followed Ray Minkai into the hangar. Taking advantage of the opportunity when everyone's attention was on Ray Minkai, it quickly jumped into the YF-21's cockpit. Although Ray Minkai asked it to try not to make a move, White Cat State Zero still felt that it needed to follow. What's the situation with the YF-21? In addition, Director Garrett should not have received any news from here, right? Ray Minkai took the pilot's uniform from the staff next to him and quickly put on while asking. Ray Minkai knew the situation of the base at a glance. He was only worried about the situation with the YF-21 and Garrett. We have not been able to contact Director Garrett. In addition, the YF-21 has already been prepared. The CHM-2 high-speed mobile missile, LM-88 second-level interceptor missile, GV-17L Gatling gun pod, and other equipment have all been installed. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, this is the first real combat of the YF-21. I wish you good luck. After the staff in charge of the logistics of the YF-21 finished speaking, they saluted Ray Minkai in unison. Although it was an unexpected situation, in this period of testing, under Ray Minkai's superb driving skills, no one doubted that the latest YF-21 they participated in would fail in its first real combat. I promise. After that, Ray Minkai boarded the YF-21. BDI system activated. The moment the light of the sensor passed through Ray Minkai's helmet, the YF-21 was activated. The red signal stick was constantly waved at the door, and the staff standing next to it made encouraging gestures as they watched the YF-21 slide out of the hangar and towards the runway. What a group of good humans. Kai, do you really not need me to take action in this battle? A small head popped out from the driver's seat. It was the White Cat State Zero that sneaked up in advance. No, I'm not sure if these enemies are the Gamu I guessed. Ray Minkai's meaning was firm. Before figuring out the true identity of the enemy, Ray Minkai did not want to take the risk of exposing the White Cat State Zero to flatten the sky. Omega 1, ready to take off at any time. As soon as the YF-21 slid out of the hangar, the control tower's communication came over. Understood. The battle in the sky had already reached its climax. On the other side, young Dyson's YF-19 also slid out of the hangar. Through the cockpit cover, young Dyson even made a gesture to the YF-21 next to him, indicating if they wanted to have a competition. YF-21, take off now. Unfortunately, Ray Minkai did not pay attention to young Dyson's signal and chose to fly into the sky. Seeing this, young Dyson did not want to be outdone. He piloted the YF-19 and followed behind the YF-21 to fly into the sky. The YF-21 and YF-19 that flew into the sky one after another were particularly eye-catching in this white-hot sky battlefield. Whether it was allies or enemies, they all noticed the appearance of the YF-21 and YF-19 almost at the same time. The two young eagles of the New Edward are coming up. Cover them. Without hesitation, the remaining VF-11 and VF-4 that were in the midst of the fierce battle immediately split up and stabilized the YF-21 and YF-19 that had just flown into the sky. However, whether it was the YF-21 or the YF-19, they did not let the VF-11 and VF-4 catch up. Instead, they chose to burst out with their own speed and directly rush to a higher altitude than the sky battlefield where they were fighting. The movement that soared into the sky instantly attracted the attention of a large number of strange enemies. Therefore, amidst the artillery fire, the strange enemies abandoned their opponents and rushed up together, trying to catch up with the YF-21 and YF-19. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, there are 50 of them chasing after us. Young Dyson glanced at the number of enemies displayed on the radar and said with a chuckle how many enemies were chasing them. Ray Minkai did not know how many enemies there were before the attack began, but now there were at least 100 enemies in this sky battlefield. In other words, under the ruckus caused by YF-21 and YF-19, half of the enemies were attracted to them. YF-21 began to join the battle. The BDI system conveyed what Ray Minkai wanted to say to all the participating VF fighters. Then, the YF-21 that soared into the sky shut down its engine and fell backward. In the blink of an eye, the nose of the plane pointed from top to bottom toward the ground. Boom! When the engine started again, the YF-21 turned into a meteor and rushed down from the top of the clouds. It pounced on the enemies that rushed up from below without fear. Whether you are Gamu or something else, this sky is my home ground now. The YF-21 that was rushing down rolled, and 10 miniature missiles were immediately launched from the back of the YF-21 body, colliding with the strange enemies that rushed up. Boom! 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 A series of explosions drowned the strange enemies, but it was unable to eliminate the more than 50 enemies that had caught up. Moreover, after launching the missiles, the YF-21 changed direction under Ray Minkai's control and flew to the right. In the smoke formed by the explosions, the strange enemies that were not affected by the explosions rushed out and bit the YF-21 that was flying to the right. Little did they know that they were ambushed. Hey, although they look strange, their brains are not that good. Just as the strange enemies bit the YF-21 at 6 o'clock, the YF-19 that was originally one step behind the YF-21 suddenly appeared behind them. Young Dyson did not hesitate and pulled the trigger with a sneer. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The missiles fired by the YF-21 were equivalent to the missiles fired by the YF-21. No, it should be said that the remaining number of missiles occupied the space behind the strange enemies. In the smoke that filled the sky, the missiles fired by the YF-19 rushed into the midst of the strange enemies and set off a second wave of explosions. Boom! Boom! The strange enemies that had just survived the first wave of missile attacks were all killed by the second wave of missile attacks. Even if there were still some enemies left in the next second, they were wiped out by the YF-21 that had transformed into a human-esque form and raised the Gatling gun in its hand. Hey, well done. Second Lieutenant Lei. You're not bad either. First Lieutenant Young. This was a cooperation. This was a cooperation between two new fighter jets that were in a competitive relationship. Chapter 517. In just a few minutes, there was a burst of cheers in the new Edward Flight Test Center. Even during this period of time, the performance of the two new airframes that participated in the Supernova project was excellent. However, in the absence of a comparison with the VF-11, the current mass-produced machine on Earth, most people lacked a clear understanding of it. Now, the battle that took place in the sky above the new Edward Flight Test Center just made up for this understanding. Young Nguyen, who was nervous before, couldn't help but cheer when he saw the YF-19 kill most of the enemies in one fell swoop. Malad, who was next to him, nodded secretly. This may be out of affirmation of the super performance of the two new airframes, but it was more of an affirmation of the cooperation between Ray Mingkai and Yong Dae-sun. No matter how fierce the relationship between the two sides was before, from the moment they stepped into the battlefield, they were comrades. They could clearly recognize this point and put it into practice. One was a bait, the other was a pursuit, seamless. With the addition of these two people and two new airframes, there was not much suspense in this battle. Director Yang, are you interested in studying our new enemy? Malad pondered for a moment. Looking at the battle situation that was getting clearer and clearer, Malad began to think about how to investigate the cause of this sudden attack. What? No, I'm just... But before Yang Nguyen could refuse, Malad added a sentence that Yang Nguyen couldn't refuse. If there is any discovery, I will report it and ask for permission to use the new technology on the YF-19 first. This was undoubtedly a great temptation for researchers. This was especially true for a genius like Yang Nguyen. I agree. Before his voice fell, Yang Nguyen dragged his assistant and rushed out of the command center. He was thinking about how to investigate the wreckage that fell from the sky. Among these wreckage, there was a relatively intact wreckage scattered in front of the gate of the new Edward Flight Test Center. At this time, the battle in the sky had also reached a new stage. After the YF-21 and YF-19 joined the battlefield and quickly eliminated half of the enemy's forces, some of the more seriously injured VF-11 and VF-4 were finally able to land and perform first aid. 40 more. Second Lieutenant, do you want to share it? After taking care of the enemy that was chasing after a VF-11 whose engine had been damaged and whose thrust had been greatly reduced, Yong Dae-sun sent out another invitation. As you wish. Ray Mingkai had no objections to this. It was time for the battle over the new Edward Flight Test Center to come to an end. From beginning to end, a pair of eyes had been quietly watching the battle. Did you fail? The thing that I spent so much effort to obtain is gone just like that. On the projection screen, YF-21 and YF-19 once again cooperated and used a scissors action to continuously strangle the enemies chasing behind them. Regardless of what kind of disaster these enemies, who resembled the gamma mentioned by Ray Mingkai, had brought to the new Edward Flight Test Center under the joint efforts of Ray Mingkai and Yong Dae-sun, the situation had changed. His threatening and arrogant demeanor was gone. He had become a little lamb that was at the mercy of Ray Mingkai and Yong Dae-sun. It's just something that I got on a whim. It's not worth feeling pity about. While speaking, YF-21 and YF-19's joint effort to strangle the enemy ended. Mice. He raised her hand, and the projection screen disappeared. But those lunatics aren't easy to deal with. With her long pink hair fluttering, the girl named Mia came to Mice. He sighed. They just want to get an opportunity to improve themselves by studying other civilizations. Although Mice, he agreed with what Mia said, she understood that this was only one of the factors in the development of civilization. Okay, things here are over. It seems that the existence I felt that day is no longer on this planet. Is it the existence you talked about before? The lion that Mice, Q, almost lost her life talking about? Mia recalled the woman she had met before coming to this world. It was a woman who lost most of her body, and even her upper body was full of scars. If it weren't for the fact that his head was still intact, it would have taken a very long time for him to recover from the fatal injury. From the aura, It's indeed very similar. But according to Mice Q's description, it's very likely that the other party is hiding in a corner of this world. But this is a matter for the future. We can basically rule out the suspicion of this planet. Mice. He recalled the strangeness she felt before, as well as the observation during the battle at the new Edward Flight Test Center, and came to a conclusion. Let's go. Mia. After the things in this world are over, it's time for our operation to begin. Yes, our operation. Mia was silent for a moment, then said faintly, I wonder if he will forgive us? I don't know. Mice. He was silent, but she could only give this answer. However, our actions are necessary, in order to not let him repeat the same mistake. Everything is for him. In the smoky sky, YF-21, who had just finished the battle, didn't land to rest like the other VF-11. Instead, under Millard's orders, it continued to stay in the defensive circle of the new Edward Flight Test Center to patrol during wartime. Although this was a bit unfair for the hero who ended the battle, but it was also necessary. Ray Minkai was responsible for the airspace east of the new Edward Flight Test Center, while YF-19 brought two VF-11 that had completed emergency repairs to patrol the airspace west of the new Edward Flight Test Center. Omega-1. This is the control tower. Report the current situation. This is Omega-1. There are no abnormalities in the airspace. No abnormal targets have appeared. The BDI system summarized the data detected by the radar, gathered the images in Ray Minkai's brain, and provided them to Ray Minkai for inspection. After a round of patrol, the airspace around the new Edward Flight Test Center had returned to its usual calm. The previous attack seemed to be a flash in the pan, and it was gone in the blink of an eye. However, it was a tragic battle that left many pilots injured and dead. Omega-1. Now, there is a Meerkat team taking off to take over the patrol mission. Attention, please. At this time, Millard's voice sounded. It turned out that the first batch of Meerkat team that had landed for emergency repairs had taken off again and was heading to take over the patrol mission with YF-21. No, Colonel, I can still carry out the mission for a while. Although the Meerkat team's body has undergone emergency repairs, I'm afraid that a long period of patrol will cause irreversible damage to the body. Ray Minkai gave his opinion. As the one in the new Edward Flight Test Center in the best condition, Ray Minkai could not justify the withdrawal of YF-21 at this time. Second Lieutenant, this is an order. There are some things here that require your presence. Miller did not accept Ray Minkai's opinion. At the same time, YF-19 on the other side was also recalled. Ray Minkai's head was full of doubts. After taking over with the Meerkat team that had rushed over, he drove YF-21 back. Could it be because of the enemies you called GAM? When YF-21 left the runway and slid into the hangar, White Cat Zero suddenly said this. Because when YF-21 landed, White Cat State Zero noticed the truck that was collecting the wreckage that was scattered everywhere and transporting it into the base. Probably, Ray Minkai did not prematurely make a conclusion. Instead, he followed the instructions to the deeper part of the new Edward Flight Test Center, which was an underground space that Ray Minkai had never been to and had never heard of before. It was an underground space that was accessible through an elevator that was independent of the base's operating system. Following the assistance sent by Millard, Ray Minkai went all the way down and came to this deeply hidden underground space. As soon as he walked out of the elevator, Ray Minkai saw the debris that was placed everywhere. It was the debris with a gray appearance and black stripes. Although it had lost all the energy that could support its operation, Ray Minkai still felt a familiar aura from it. Kai, there's no smell of the abyss. White Cat Zero laid on Ray Minkai's shoulder and raised its head slightly. Just now, State White Cat Zero immediately went to observe the debris placed next to it. I know. If I guess correctly, this is indeed something called jam that I know. Ray Minkai muttered silently in his mind. He knew that White Cat Zero could hear his muttering. It's just that you don't know how these things came here. White Cat Zero's gaze fell on the assistant who led the way in front for a while, and then looked at the debris of GAM. This is a mystery. Perhaps it is related to the woman named Miss E. you met before. Even though Ray Minkai had many guesses in his mind, there was not much evidence in front of him that could solve the mystery. Along the way, the lights on both sides seemed to gradually dim. It's here. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, Colonel Millard and Director Yang Nguyen are waiting for you. In fact, the assistant did not tell Ray Minkai about another person who was present. That was the highest person in charge of the Supernova Project, General Gao Maisai. As soon as he walked in, Ray Minkai was stunned on the spot. After saluting, he stood aside and waited for the next sentence. Now, Gao Maisai and Millard's attention was focused on the debris of Yang Nguyen's men. Although Yang Nguyen was not a material analysis professional, he was still competent for some simple analysis tasks. For example, after Yang Nguyen took over the collected debris, Yang Nguyen quickly analyzed the composition of the debris. This is not a technology we are familiar with. Whether it is the technology used by the Jetlati people now, or the technology left in the ruins of primitive civilizations found everywhere in the Milky Way, there is no technology related to this debris. Yang Nguyen revealed the fragment in his hand and gave an answer that left Gao Maisai and Milad in disbelief. And this answer, Ray Minkai was well aware. Gam. This was from another world, a force that appeared in the story of the battle ferry and the pilot. The technology used naturally would not appear in this world. Chapter 518. A civilization that we have never heard of? Gao Maisai and Milad frowned as they listened to Yang Nguyen's explanation. After waiting for a while, Gao Maisai finally spoke. Let's call it day. Milad, Director Yang Nguyen. Gao Maisai paused and turned to look at Ray Minkai, who had been silent all this while. Also, our hero, Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. Please go back and rest first. I believe that the battle just now has already made you feel tired. This was undoubtedly in order to chase them away that could not be refused. However, Milad and Ray Minkai did not have any objections. At the same time, Ray Minkai even dragged away Yang Nguyen, who was reluctant to leave. After struggling for a while and trying to stay, Yang Nguyen finally came back to his senses after taking the elevator to the surface. Colonel Milad, is this matter very serious? Yang Nguyen recalled what he had just said and realized what it meant. Probably. Milad did not say it clearly. He just responded casually and quietly waited for the elevator to return to the surface. When the elevator reached the surface, Milad called out to Ray Minkai, who wanted to leave with Yang Nguyen. Second Lieutenant, come with me. Milad, who did not explain why he called out to Ray Minkai, turned around and walked towards another elevator. That was the elevator to the floor where Milad's office was located. When the elevator separated Milad and Ray Minkai from the outside world, Milad, who had his back facing Ray Minkai, slowly opened his mouth. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, do you think we still need pilots who are fighting on the front lines? When he opened his mouth, Ray Minkai knew what Milad was going to say next. The success of the Ghost X-9 had already threatened the existence of drones and the pilots who piloted them. Especially in the face of the high casualty rate of the Earth's unified upper echelons. Even in the face of the Great Galactic Migration, the balance in their hearts was probably already tilted towards the strong combat performance of drones. Even if they were destroyed, they would not lose their precious pilots. Of course, there was another more important factor. Over the past few decades, every time they encountered a terrifyingly powerful primary fleet, the fleet they encountered would basically be annihilated. Under such a grim situation, Project Supernova and the birth of Ghost X-9 would naturally be affected to a certain extent. Ray Minkai weighed the pros and cons in his mind before he carefully voiced his thoughts. Colonel, I don't know the answer to that question, but I know that we humans have already set foot in every corner of the Milky Way. Then, they will represent the most elite group of humans. Naturally, they will also have to promote the idea of humans from Earth and the unification of Earth in front of alien civilizations that have already been discovered or are about to be discovered. At the end of his sentence, Ray Minkai added another sentence. Compared to cold machines, pilots who can speak and laugh with powerful performance are easier to communicate with the civilizations they discover. They can also gain more goodwill. Ray Minkai's words made Milad nod. Even though Millard felt that Ray Minkai was implying something, this was also his judgment of the future direction of Earth's unification. Yes, no matter how the times change, our latest fighter always needs to be piloted by the most powerful pilots among us. This way, we can spread the idea of Earth's unification to every corner of the Milky Way. Colonel, has the situation changed? Ray Minkai asked knowingly. Millard was silent. Through the glass, he watched the sun gradually disappear into the mountains. Yes, it may be time for Project Supernova to be suspended. Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai, before the attack, General Gomez had already ordered me to disband the development team of YF-21 and YF-19 on the spot. Is it the drone? Ghost X-9. As soon as Ray Minkai spoke, Millard was surprised. Although the testing location of Ghost X-9 was at the new Edward Flight Test Center, due to the confidentiality work and the fact that it entered the space testing stage after a short ground test, even in the new Edward Flight Test Center, there were very few people who knew about the existence of X-9. Second Lieutenant, you really surprised me. In every aspect. At the end of his speech, Millard gave Ray Minkai a meaningful look. Faced with the probing gaze, Ray Minkai responded calmly. As a pilot, it is necessary to have a detailed understanding of the enemies you may face in the future. Oh, Millard raised his eyebrows and changed the topic. It seemed to be a casual remark. The military police team seems to be a little idle recently. Well, the current situation is enough for them to be busy. Ray Minkai's gaze fell on the tarmac outside, where the broken VF-11 and VF-4 were parked. Among the people coming and going, the people wearing helmets printed with military police words were particularly eye-catching. All he did was play some petty tricks. Second Lieutenant, compared to you, Young Dyson is much simpler. Millard snorted, but his gaze didn't intend to pursue the meaning behind Ray Minkai's words. In the mind of the first lieutenant, there are probably only things like flying and picking up girls. So, his behavior is easy to understand. Ray Minkai casually replied, but he didn't expect Millard to counter with a sentence. Then what about you? Second Lieutenant, from the first day I saw you, I felt that you didn't need to explain. Although I haven't personally driven the YF-21, I know that without at least 120 hours of training, the YF-21 can't be licensed to drive. What about you? Second Lieutenant, how many hours of training have you gone through before? When Ray Minkai boarded the YF-21 for the first time, the amazing feat of smoothly driving the YF-21 into the air was brought up by Millard. He used it as a point of doubt to question Ray Minkai. Probably, I'm a genius. In response, Ray Minkai just smiled and shamelessly claimed that he was a genius. Genius? You make it sound like the same thing. Amidst the cold snort, the elevator that Milad and Ray Minkai took finally arrived at their destination floor. Let's stop here. Second Lieutenant, I'll inform Yang Nguyen and Young Dyson of this news later. As for the other side, I'll leave it to you, whether it's Director Garrett or the team members. Understood. However, the moment the elevator door was completely closed, Ray Minkai heard Millard sigh. Hopefully, there's still a chance. Kai, what is he talking about? White Cat State Zero's voice sounded in Ray Minkai's mind. He's referring to GAM. Millard means that because of GAM's appearance, the Earth Unified might change their mind. General Gao Maisai's merciless eviction order was most likely because of GAM's appearance. They wanted to directly contact the Earth Unified headquarters. However, it was the 30th anniversary now. Coupled with Ghost X-9 service, even if the Earth Unified had any reaction, they would only give a reply after the 30th anniversary. And during this period, the most important event that would affect the development of future generations happened. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai patted the White Cat State Zero on his shoulder. Forget it. There's no need to think about this. What's going to happen next will turn all these unnecessary things into nothing. White Cat State Zero's gaze changed and became dignified. What I did to the X-9 drone shouldn't have been discovered. However, Will the enemy named Gam appear again? Even if the humans here do not know where they came from, we should have a general goal. Yes, if Jarmu's arrival wasn't an accident, then they should be related to that miss. As the 30th anniversary of the victory of the First Interstellar War approached, people living in the Earth Circle came to Macross City, which was built by the surviving humans after the First Interstellar War, to wait for the arrival of the anniversary. In the sky, a helicopter was flying across Macross City according to its original flight path. It was heading towards the center of Macross City, the symbol of the Earth Unified Army, Macross, SDF-1, which had survived the First Interstellar War until now. Miss Mia, in front of you is our human, the symbol of the Earth Unified Army, Macross, SDF-1. It was all thanks to its protection that humans had the chance to survive the First Interstellar War. Sitting in the helicopter, Matthew kept introducing the huge warship in front of him to the two women sitting opposite him. SDF-1, how nostalgic. Suddenly, Miss sigh made Matthew freeze for a moment. Then he smiled. So Miss has been to Macross City before. Have you seen SDF-1 here? Miss did not deny it, but did not admit it either. She just said faintly, "Yes, I've seen it up close." Then, without waiting for Matthew to speak, she took the initiative to change the topic. "All right, how is your relationship provider? Why don't I see her?" "Miss Mei Wong? Oh, she still has some things to deal with on Eden. I saw that there were still a few days before the memorial ceremony, so I asked her to deal with her own matters before coming to Earth." "Is that so?" Miss nodded slightly. "Then let her come quickly. Otherwise, she'll miss the show." Matthew glanced at the SDF-1 in the distance and nodded slightly. "Yes, we can't miss a good show." Mei Wong, who was talking about Matthew and Miss was in a dilemma at this moment. She was the only one standing alone in the waiting area of the former Iron Triangle, waiting for the cosmic flight to Earth. Originally, young Dyson came to see her off. But just now, young Dyson received a sudden phone call and left a few unimportant words. He then turned around and disappeared from the waiting area on the spot. Although young Dyson didn't say it explicitly, Mei Wong had already guessed that the only thing that could take young Dyson away from her was flight. What about Garrett? Mei Wong looked down at the paper in her hand. "Sorry, Mei Wong. I remember now." This short line of words had already explained why Garrett didn't come to see her off at this moment. With sadness, Mei Wong left Eden for Earth, but she didn't know that Sharon, who used her as a blueprint, was already waiting for her on Earth. Chapter 519. Bang! A heavy fist slammed into the wall, but the owner of the fist didn't feel a trace of pain, because the impact of the news he received before had long exceeded the limit of this pain. Damn it! Why? Even if that crappy X9 has decent performance, what kind of fighter is it if it doesn't have a pilot? Young Dyson kept cursing. Yang Nguyen had already told Young Dyson about the suspension of the Supernova project and the reason for its suspension. As Ray Ming-kai expected, Young Dyson really made a scene in Millard's office, but there was nothing he could do. "Lieutenant Young, it seems that you want to take further action." Standing in front of the window, Ray Ming-kai looked at Young Dyson, who ignored Yang Nguyen and Lucy's dissuasion and returned to his room. "Yes, that guy will always take action when things don't go his way." A familiar voice came from the room. It was Garrett. The previous battle at the new Edward Flight Test Center not only shocked the citizens of nearby Eden City, but it also made Garrett almost jump out of his bed and return to the new Edward Flight Test Center despite the risk of being affected by the aftermath of the battle. Fortunately, the addition of Ray Ming-kai and Young Dyson made the attack end quickly and allowed Garrett to return here safely. "Director Garrett, do you think Lieutenant Young will?" Ray Ming-kai didn't say the second half of the sentence, but he knew that Garrett should also know what he was going to say next. "Probably." Garrett smiled softly, showing a nostalgic expression. Ray Ming-kai glanced at Garrett and suddenly asked, "Director Garrett, are we just going to watch?" Garrett lowered his gaze, and after a moment of silence, he voiced the concerns in his heart. "Second Lieutenant, do you think it's better to wait and see, or take the initiative to attack. If the situation is not clear, we need someone to take the initiative. Ray Minkai replied, but this sentence made Garrett nod. Yes, at this time, someone must take the initiative to attack. However, can we really do that with our strength? Garrett walked to the window and looked down at the dejected Yang Nguyen. Second Lieutenant, do you remember the voice I mentioned to you before? When I was in the hospital, I tried to search for clues. The result was just as I had guessed. The BDI system has been hacked. By whom? In Ray Minkai's memory, from the entire process of the Sharon incident, there were no traces of YF-21 being invaded at all. Even after the incident, the results of the investigation of the wreckage of YF-21 were the same. But now, Garrett was sure that YF-21 had been hacked. What was going on? In fact, I didn't think about this at the beginning. But if I and the pilots of YF-21 are also part of the BDI system, then the one who was hacked was not YF-21, but the pilot connected to the BDI system? Under Garrett's guidance, Ray Minkai thought of this possibility. Yes, at that time, I was indeed hacked when I was piloting YF-21. It was in that abnormal melody. Moreover, the invasion was not just a one-time thing, but it was lurking in my body, waiting for the opportunity to launch again. Garrett raised his right hand and held it tightly. Second Lieutenant, the previous berserk was the after-effect of the invasion. Originally, there was a berserk factor in the bloodline of the Jetladi, but I could feel that it was not a berserk factor, but an even crazier existence. With that said, Garrett looked at Ray Minkai and expressed his concern. Second Lieutenant, in the previous test of YF-21, you also encountered an unknown signal. Although it seems like you're fine now, I can't guarantee that you won't experience the same thing that happened to me in the future. Ray Minkai was silent. If it was a mutation, Ray Minkai had indeed encountered it once. It was just that his mutation was not the same as Garrett's. Because Ray Minkai's mutation was related to Sharon Epp, who had a memory of Vervian. I will be careful. There were many explanations in his heart, but this was the only sentence he could say. Then, I will go back and prepare everything. Second Lieutenant, please rest well. Knowing Young Dyson's character, Garrett had begun to prepare for the next operation. Unfortunately, Garrett was not a part of the operation this time. Moreover, when Garrett stepped out of the door, Garrett's voice once again reached Ray Minkai's ears. If you can, help me say sorry to Young. I will. Director Garrett. Night fell quietly. From a moment the Supernova project was destined to be terminated, the new Edward Flight Test Center returned to its former noisy and quiet moments. Looking at the scenery outside the window, Millard, who was sitting in a chair, was silent. Millard was also one of the people who felt reluctant about the termination of the Supernova project. Regardless of whether it was Young Dyson or Ray Minkai, Millard was deeply impressed by these two talented pilots. Their efforts and performance, to a certain extent, had conquered Millard, and it also made Millard have great expectations for the development of the two in the Earth Unified Army in the future. However, all of this came to an abrupt end before the 30th anniversary. While thinking, Millard took off his glasses and was about to take out a silk handkerchief to wipe them, but a burst of urgent ringtone interrupted his movements. Millard frowned, but he still put his glasses back on and pressed the communication button. It's me. What's the matter? This is the control tower. Colonel Millard, please come to the control tower. There's a situation. What? A few minutes later, Millard, who rushed to the command center, looked at the main screen full of names in shock. The radar chart, which was supposed to show the airspace around the new Edward Flight Test Center, was now constantly scrolling a name. Young. No one was unfamiliar with this name. However, what was the purpose of this name? Is an invasion. Quick, take measures. It's impossible. Colonel Millard, we have already tried from the beginning, but our defense and countermeasures have all failed. What? Millard was stunned and suddenly slammed the table. Quick, get someone to find Lieutenant Young Dyson. Ask her what happened. However, just as Millard's voice fell, the main screen in front of him flickered and changed to another name. Kai. It's Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai. First it was Young, then it was Kai. This change came too quickly. Millard never thought that the mastermind behind the invasion of New Edward would be related to the two pilots who were the test pilots of the Supernova project. The scrolling names on the screen at this moment were like fresh blood stabbing deeply into everyone's eyes, and they didn't know what to do for a while. Strange. Full of strangeness. Millard reached out and pressed on the communicator, but he couldn't press any communication button on it. What the hell is going on? In the midst of his anxiety, the name on the screen changed again. Young, Kai. These two names were no longer the same as before. Instead, they constantly appeared in each other's camp and crazily competed for each other's space. The image on the main screen was also stirred at this time until the two names separated again and became distinct. It was a situation where both sides occupied each side of the screen. Lieutenant Young Dyson and Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai come to the control tower. Such a strange change made Millard no longer confused and immediately took action. However, Millard's action was destined to fail, because just as his communication was sent to Young Dyson's room, the roar of an explosion swept across. Boom! Even in the control tower protected by safety measures, the explosion from the hangar could still be heard. Confirm the situation. Quick! Report. It's Hangar 02. It's YF-19. Lieutenant Young Dyson piloted YF-19 out of the hangar. As soon as he heard the news, Millard clenched his teeth tightly. Lock on a YF-19, launch missiles. We must not let Young Dyson escape. But in fact, when dozens of missiles were about to catch up with YF-19, YF-19 had already opened the FLOD hyperdrive and rushed into the hyperdrive channel to Earth. YF-19 is lost. The missile did not hit the target. Lucy, who happened to be on duty, turned her head to look at Millard, but she was surprised to find that the anger on Millard's face had disappeared and was replaced by a calm face. Let Second Lieutenant Ray Minkai chase after him with YF-21. When this news came from the control tower, Ray Minkai had already changed into a pilot's suit and walked to YF-21 with Garrett. They had been waiting for a long time. The order has been issued. Second Lieutenant. Then I'm going. Be careful of Sharon. If my previous speculation is correct, her singing can indeed affect the pilots of YF-21. In this regard, Ray Minkai gave a thumbs up in response. Until Garrett stood at the door of the hangar and watched the fully armed YF-21 slide out of the hangar and rush into the sky from the runway. At this moment, Earth ushered in the 30th anniversary of the victory of the First Interstellar War. For this reason, Earth Unification had prepared many programs to celebrate the arrival of this day. Among them, Sharon, the most popular virtual singer in recent years, was among them. Mei Wang, who came to Earth from Eden, did not have time to rest. She boarded the helicopter arranged by the company, passed through Macross City, and came to the edge of Lake Macross where SDF-1 was located. There are more and more people. Miss Mei Wang, today's performance, please. The helicopter pilot seemed to be a fan of Sharon. Yes. Then please rest assured, I will let Sharon bring out 200% of her performance. Mei Wing looked at the crowd below and responded to the other party insincerely. She didn't know why she was like this, but the moment she left Eden and came to Earth, Mei Wing vaguely noticed that something was wrong, but she didn't know what it meant. It would take at least a few hours on the ground, but with the speed of the helicopter, it only took less than 10 minutes. The moment Mei Wang stepped out of the helicopter and stepped on the legendary battleship SDF-1, she felt a little dizzy. Miss Mei Wang, how can I help you? The receptionist looked at Mei Wang, who was standing silently next to the helicopter, with concern. No, it's okay. I'm just not used to FLOD navigation. I just need to rest for a while. When ordinary people were in FLOD navigation, they usually used various means to reduce the discomfort and impact of navigation. Now, Mei Wang's state was basically in line with the receptionist's understanding of the discomfort after FLOD navigation. Then, Miss Mei Wang, please come this way. We have prepared a room for you to rest. There is still some time before the ceremony begins. Miss Mei Wang, please rest well. However, Mei Wang didn't want to rest now. She wanted to meet her boss immediately. No, I don't know where my boss is now. I have something to talk to him about. Under the guidance of the receptionist, Mei Wing quickly found the room where her boss was. However, before she knocked on the door, she heard a dispute inside, followed by a gunshot. Mei Wang, who was frightened by the sudden gunshot, accidentally opened the door in a panic. She saw Matthew holding a pistol and looking at her dead boss with a sneer. No! At this moment, the fear of death made Mei Wang turn around and run. She didn't know how long she could hide on this SDF-1, but her biological instinct made Mei Wang run around in panic, until she ran into a huge room that looked like a central hub. You're here, Mei Wang. A soft call startled Mei Wang, who was still in shock, and he jumped up from the ground. Who is it? The panicked Mei Wang subconsciously searched around, but she couldn't find anything that could help her defend herself. Haha, don't be afraid. Mei Wang, I won't hurt you. This time, Mei Wang finally recognized the voice that rang out again. Sharon, is that you? It's me, Mei Wang. There was a flash of light, and Sharon, who looked like a goddess, appeared in front of Mei Wang. With a contemptuous smile on her mouth, she looked down at Mei Wang, who was huddled in the corner in panic. What a pity, Mei Wang. It's just a trivial matter, and you're scared like this. Trivial matter? Mei Wang didn't expect Sharon's understatement to stab her. That's a human life. A living person died, just like that. Really? Mei Wang's struggling face made Sharon smile. You know what? Mei Wang, in a distant time and space, every day, every hour, every moment, every second, thousands of lives, even an entire planet die. In such a scene, it's just an ordinary life. What's there to panic about? You, Sharon, what the hell are you talking about? Humph. Sharon smiled softly and ignored Mei Wang. She slowly raised her head and looked at the dome as if she was looking at the boundless universe. He's here, my knight. Chapter 520. Yes, my knight. Mei Wang looked at Sharon in bewilderment. Suddenly, she found that Sharon's figure began to sway. Moreover, Sharon's voice became distorted, hoarse, and even disorderly. The program crashed? Mei Wang had only seen the same situation when she first joined Sharon Epps' development team and became Sharon Epps' emotional provider. That was a program crash that the developers had spent a lot of effort and brainpower to resolve. If that was the case, Mei Wang could not help but feel relieved. However, this chaos would not end because of this sudden program crash. Crack! With a strange sound, Sharon's swaying figure gradually became clear, and the expression on her face made Mei Wang realize that the Sharon in front of her seemed to have returned to the Sharon Epp who used her as an emotional template. Mei Wang, it's too late. The young you like is rushing over here. He will be happy. So, he doesn't need you anymore. On the face of the holy goddess, there was an extremely cold gaze. Young, you, what do you want to do to him? Hearing Yong's name, Mei Wang panicked. Give Yong happiness. As soon as Sharon's voice fell, the cable scattered around, Mei Wang suddenly twisted, and in a few seconds, Mei Wang was tied up before she could react. You, Sharon, let go of me. The cables were getting stronger and stronger. Mei Wang was almost out of breath. Mei Wang, who clearly loves Yong but wavers between Yong and Garrett. There is no need for her to exist. Yong, I'll loan him enough. Sharon looked coldly at Mei Wang, who was gradually losing her breath under the tightening cables. You, Sharon, the moment the cables broke through a certain limit, Mei Wang lost consciousness on the spot. However, a struggle appeared on Sharon's cold face again, and her figure showed signs of swaying again. Mei Wang, poor woman, just like that. Before she finished speaking, the cables that were about to send Mei Wang to the netherworld loosened at this moment, and the unconscious Mei Wang fell heavily to the ground. However, Mei Wang did not wake up because of the huge impact. Looking silently at Mei Wang, who fell to the ground, Sharon's figure gradually became transparent until her figure completely disappeared from the room. The performance is about to begin. Mei Wang, you don't need to do anything. Because I was born for you, I will replace you. Outside, it was finally time for the ceremony to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the First Interstellar War. Amidst the magnificent symphony played by the military band, the military, the unified organization's upper echelons, and representatives from all walks of life stood solemnly as they watched the flag representing the unified Earth slowly rise amidst the magnificent military music. When it rose to its highest point and caught the attention of tens of thousands of people, the flight demonstration team, formed by the 6 VF-1s that had made outstanding military achievements in the First Interstellar War, also drew a colorful trajectory over Lake Macross. They then flew over the SDF-1 and marked the end of the opening ceremony. The opening speech ended quickly. As a commemoration ceremony that had been held for 30 years, even if the people who stood on the podium were different each time, the core of their speeches was generally similar. Therefore, it was time for the most eye-catching segment. Sharon Epp, this virtual singer who emerged in the past few years, although in the beginning, was regarded as an anomaly by most people. Later on, relying on her unique charm, she conquered everyone. Therefore, at this important moment, she stood at the core of Earth's unification, on Lake Macross where the SDF-1 was parked. At this moment, colorful lights rose from the bottom of Lake Macross, constantly changing colors. Sometimes it turned into a giant pillar of light, and sometimes it turned into a light that led to the sky. No matter how they changed, in the moment when Sharon was about to sing the song, these lights hung down and converged, presenting a cone of lights in front of the audience. At the same time, a cross formed by a combination of cones that represented Sharon Epp appeared in the light. When Sharon's song sounded in Macross City, YF-19 and YF-21 broke away from the FLOD transition and smoothly arrived at the Earth-Moon sector. She's starting to sing. In the cockpit of YF-21, the white cat State Zero raised its head slightly and stared at the blue planet in front of it. The white cat State Zero could clearly feel the power that it was extremely familiar with. Fragments. Moreover, there were fragments that might contain Vervian's memory. Next, the solar system, no, it should be the fleet surrounding the Earth, will become our enemy. Sharon's song had already sounded, and Ray Minkai was very clear about what was going to happen next. He was not as confident as young Dyson, who believed that he had the ability to rush into Earth from the huge fleet that surrounded Earth. What's more, Ray Minkai was not clear about Sharon's current state. According to Sharon's original state, what would happen next would be an unimaginably terrifying interception net from Earth's fleet. State Zero, sit tight. With a thought, Ray Minkai decided to follow behind YF-19 and rush into Earth's atmosphere. Be careful. The power of the song is starting to change. The white cat State Zero lowered its body and lay down beside the pilot's seat to stabilize its body. At this time, a warning from Earth's unified communication network appeared in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. Level 5 defense state. Has the song started? This was the action that Sharon took immediately when she took over Earth's fleet and planetary defense system. The purpose was to let Young experience the thrill of life and death. However, Ray Minkai was not sure if the current Sharon had such intentions. Under the Level 5 defense state, all the defense satellites in the sector where YF-1 and YF-21 were located turned around and aimed their cannons at the two new fighter jets that were rapidly descending into Earth's atmosphere. Come on, Yong-yi, it's time to show your skills. Ray Minkai, who had already made up his mind to follow YF-19's landing, silently watched as YF-19 launched missiles, shot down the surrounding satellites, and used the scattered fragments to break through the satellite defense network. In an instant, under the missiles launched by the YF-19, more than 10 satellites turned into fragments in the dazzling fire and quickly fell to the Earth below. It's here. With the help of the BDI system, Ray Minkai quickly used YF-21's human form to catch a few large fragments floating nearby and stepped on the largest fragment under YF-21's feet. He gathered the remaining fragments around him and disguised them as larger wreckage before rushing into the atmosphere. Maybe it was luck. Or maybe it was because Sharon's attention was all on YF-19 and did not notice YF-21 disguised as a large wreckage. Ray Minkai saw through the fire that was so hot that it could melt steel and saw VF-19 that had temporarily shut down its control system and was tumbling into the atmosphere in a free fall. Beside it, attacks from the satellite defense network were constantly passing by, setting off a series of explosions around VF-19 one after another. In the night sky, meteors streaked across the horizon. Want to see him? Want to see him? Young, the person I love the most. In the dazzling light, Sharon's program kept calling out to her. It was as if, in the dark space where no light could be seen, a knight eager to break through the darkness rode on the footsteps of the light to the girl in front of him and was saved by him. No, the person you love the most is not Young Dyson, Sharon. Suddenly, the darkness receded and the light scattered. A figure quietly appeared and stood behind Sharon. Who are you? Sharon turned around and looked at the person behind her, only to find that the person standing in front of her actually looked exactly the same as her. I am you. Sharon, your chip is me. That person said. You. So it's you who is disturbing my heart. Sharon's hair suddenly stood up as if she was enraged. Sharon, you don't have a heart. The reason why you feel a heart is only because of the emotions that Mei Wang provided you. At the boundary between light and darkness, that person stood in front of Sharon and said indifferently, No. Sharon stood quietly in the darkness and looked at the person standing under the light. She raised her finger and said to her heart, I'm alive, so my heart is here. That's just my memory of being alive. Sharon, you're just a program. Everything you feel is just a figment of someone else's imagination. That person quietly looked at Sharon, who pointed to her heart and said a fact. Hearing that, Sharon put down her hand, turned her head, and looked at the darkness above her head. It was as if she could see YF-19 breaking through the atmosphere and the satellite defense network from the darkness. I have a wish in my heart, so I'm standing here. Young, I want him to be happy. While speaking, Sharon looked at the figure standing under the light again. I want Young to be happy, so don't get in my way. Undead. Kacha. Sharon's words were like a thunderclap. Bolts of lightning danced wildly in the darkness and tore apart the radiance. Undead. Thank you. You gave me the power to stand next to Young and hug him. So, disappear. The darkness raged, and the light faded. The figure standing under the light sighed quietly, and he couldn't help but look up at the darkness above his head like Sharon. My night. Under Macross Lake, a figure with a cold aura was slowly lifted from the depths of the ground by an elevator and was sent to the takeoff passage in the sky. This was Sharon's gift to Young. It was also the enemy Ray Minkai had been on guard against for a long time, Ghost X9. At the moment when the water splashed, Ghost X9, which had supercomputing power and the ability to self-evolve, rushed into the sky in front of Sharon's incarnation of the Goddess of Light. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. Under the bridge of the SDF-1, Matthew, who caused this incident, looked at the mainframe in front of him with fascination. Finally, everything he hoped for finally happened. It happened right in front of his eyes. What a perfect figure that was. What a moving song that was. From this moment on, all humans would be fascinated by Sharon Epps' singing. This would be a peaceful and beautiful world. Congratulations. Mr. Matthew, your wish has come true. Miss E's voice awakened Matthew, who was intoxicated by Sharon's singing. Thank you, Miss E and Miss Mia. It was your help that made my wish come true. Matthew pushed his glasses and bowed to the two people standing by the door. There's no need to say thank you. We're here to complete the deal. Miss E waved her hand and glanced at Sharon's mainframe. Unexpectedly, when she looked at the mainframe also turned around and looked at Miss E. Be careful. Mia, who was standing next to her, was nervous and couldn't help but remind her. No, don't worry. Sharon's confusion won't work on us. Miss E smiled confidently, took 2 steps forward, and looked at Matthew. Looking at Miss E's confident smile, even when Matthew deliberately delayed, she didn't show any signs of being confused. Matthew flinched. Originally, he thought that when Sharon fully displayed her ability, Miss E and Mia, who provided him with the chip, would inevitably be hypnotized, allowing Matthew to completely erase the truth hidden behind Sharon Epp. However, Matthew miscalculated. What? Mr. Matthew, do you want to break the contract? The smile on Miss E's face gradually deepened. No, how could I be that kind of person? It's just that Sharon is now at a critical moment. If I take out the emotional data now, I'm afraid it will cause irreversible damage to Sharon. Miss E had already seen through Matthew's quibble at a glance, but she didn't see through it. She just nodded slightly, walked to the sofa next to her, sat down, and put on a waiting look. Sharon saw this scene, but she also took the same approach as Miss E. Come on, yo, I want to see you so much. Sharon's gaze drifted away with Ghost, X9. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Mei Wang, who had fallen into the darkness of her consciousness, suddenly heard someone calling her. It was an unfamiliar voice that she had never heard before, but Mei Wang could hear a trace of familiarity in this voice. Who is it? Who is calling me? Mei Wang was immersed in the darkness and had no intention of waking up. Mei Wang, wake up! Yon, you're coming. As soon as she heard a name, Mei Wang suddenly opened her eyes and coughed violently. When she finally recovered, Mei Wang raised her pale face and looked beside her, but she was shocked to find that the person standing beside her was a white shadow. Sharon. No, I'm not Sharon. I'm just a poor person who happened to be one with Sharon. Mei Wang. The white figure didn't do anything to hurt Mei Wang, but through self-introduction, she expressed her goodwill to Mei Wang. I'm Vermilion, a person who should have been destroyed with the destruction of the world, but by chance, I was awakened by Sharon. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.